day of the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and welcome to everybody. And first thing I'll do is do a roll call. Start with you, Jack.
Jack and Riley here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Kevin McCarthy here.
Paul Trevor here. Steve Gomer, I'm right here.
Okay, and I'd like to invite all those who wish to participate, join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm gonna do that. Okay, the first order on the agenda are public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Any member here from the public wish to address the board on any items? Hearing none, we will move to licenses, permits, and events. The first item we have is the Jingle Bell Walk. Is there someone here to talk to us about the Jingle Bell Walk?
Yes.
Hi, could you introduce yourself, please? Name,
My
address.
name is Paula Murphy, and I'm the Program Director at the South Shore Community Center. And we are hoping that you will accept our application for our 22nd Annual Jingle Bell Walk that will be held the day after Thanksgiving, November 25th, from 2 to 4 p.m. And we also ask that you would kindly waive the $250 usage fee.
Okay. All right. The board members, any questions?
Nope. Great day in town.
It is a great day. And you've been doing this now for how long?
22 years.
22 years. And the 250 wave, we've done that last year. We historically do that, Chris? The waiving the 250, don't we?
We usually waive,
This for us, yeah.
For nonprofit.
well, you historically.
Okay. Good. And that sounds good. Just before we get to that, did you do the thing on Saturday at the Halloween? Was that your group?
That was actually our nursery school.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Ian Madden, the
Yeah.
Nursery school director.
That was
And
pretty
I always
fabulous. I drove by. I saw all these costumes and people walking around you. They did a really good job. Okay. Any questions on this? Any motions anyone wants to make relative to this application?
I move that we approve the South Shore Community Center's 22nd Annual Jingle Bell Walk for Friday, November 25th at 2 p.m.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That's unanimous, Tracy.
That was easy.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much. It's quite
Thank you,
enjoyable. We
guys.
look forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Happy
waive,
Thanksgiving.
Okay, great. You too now.
Kevin, we're gonna vote to waive the fee or not? Oh, I move that we waive the $250 event application fee.
Second.
Okay, first and second, and is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It's unanimous, Tracy. Thank you for picking that up. Next is the application for the Friends of Holly Hill Farm, farm to table dinner. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of that application? Is there anybody coming?
I don't
And we can
know.
go back to
believe so,
something
no.
else?
It's just always,
They just,
they do, I think, 3 of these a year, these farm table dinners.
I think you're at one of them.
I was at the last one, that's very good.
I make a motion, we approve the application for the special one-day liquor license for Friends of Holly Hill Farm, 11/5/16 from 6 to 10 p.m. at Holly Hill Farm, 263 Jerusalem Road.
Okay, motion made, is there a second?
second.
Okay, any discussion?
Great event. Go.
The record note, the discussion is great event, okay. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? None, I mean, 5-0 for Tracy. Good. Now, the Rotary Wine Tasting, they've withdrawn their application, and they'll be reapplying. I think it's gonna be in February. They've moved their event to February for that, so.
I think it's gonna be the first or second Wednesday of February, I think is what they're shooting for.
Yeah.
The second or ninth, I think, so.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Bound Brook bond issue. This is the signing document, so would you come up, identify yourself and discuss these?
Paul Linares, treasure collector, and this is a two-part. The full award included a grant for $158,000 and the bond of $842,000, and this is the signing off on the bond for $842,000. This is with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So they're gonna be signing the paperwork later this week, and hopefully we'll get the money in about 10 to 14 days.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Wait, I want to see if Paul, do you have anything else?
Huh?
Do you have anything else to say?
Huh? No, I'm
Before
good.
we do-
I'll just take any
okay.
questions. And
Board members, Steve?
A few years back, the Jacobs Meadow project was quote-unquote completed, and a balance from that authorization was transferred, repurposed from the Jacobs Meadow project to the Bound Brook project.
Okay.
And I didn't hear any mention of that balance.
Don't know. I know the project is ongoing, so it may have been spent between, I think
That may be the case, I just wanna make sure it's accounted for.
I think we talked about this the last meeting, the total authorization, the project was set at town meeting, and
1.91 something.
Okay, we do have
which
the,
includes some town money from various tranches of money, like the grant, and then the $1 million from the state, so peace grant, and then small.
okay, we do have the chairman of the capital committee, his hands up, so maybe you can eliminate us on
Well,
this.
I think that, the special article on James Brook is still open, and the money, according to the last we heard from, Brian Joyce, was being held there to finish up the dam going into the harbor and making sure that was working properly. But there was some money left over. We look at the special articles on a regular basis to see what we can pull back.
And that there may be a purpose for it, is that, what do
Well,
I-
there may be some work still to be done on it.
Can I ask a question, is, how much is there, do you know?
Kevin, I don't have it with me,
But that's in your regular capital spreadsheet
that's
that you have?
well, it's in a special article spreadsheet that we
That you have,
review on probably 2 or 3 times a year.
My point here is that there was a balance that was released and repurposed by vote of town meeting. I wanna say that it was 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that was done. And it was repurposed specifically for, the culvert project, Bound Brook culvert project. And, just as a matter of making sure that our books are clean, I'd certainly like to find out where that is within this project, because that's a voted authorization. I believe that Sam's recollection of that was a remainder piece of the fund that was held behind originally for the appropriation for Jacobs Meadow.
Yeah, I'm not clear on the one you're talking about, Steve.
It's what originally fired up the audit of the Jacobs Meadow project.
Right, okay.
Okay, because we, at the time, the capital budget committee was not confident that the project was complete.
So my recollection is that money was repurposed out of Jacobs Meadow. I think it was like 125, and it was for engineering drawings. And then once they got the drawings, they used that to submit for state money. But I don't know the exact numbers. $1.9 million for the appropriation seems too high to me.
Yeah, I think
Wasn't it about 800,000?
It was like $1.1 million, I think, was the
yeah,
total
1.19.
appropriation.
1.2 or,
Yeah.
1.19.
yeah, 1.19, yeah,
Yeah.
not 1.9.
I mean, we can certainly
That's
find out.
1.9,
Yeah.
sorry.
By-
It's 1.19.
The reason for my question is just to account for it.
Yeah.
It may have been already expended, and that's it. That's all I wanted to find out.
We'll check.
Well, could we do this then, could we either send out a memo on this or report to us on, would that be you or?
Yeah, I'll double check and we'll send that email out to
And
all.
send it out to all of us so we can have that question answered, and you're clear as to what Steve's asking.
Yep.
Thank you.
So you want just an accounting, right? The
Just the
total
account.
authorization is roughly 1.2. We used, repurposed for 125,000.
Whatever the amount was,
We
right?
went and got bonding for 800,000, just, sources and uses on that project, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Good. All right, proceeding with the issue at hand here, now where do we go here?
Anything else? Is there any other questions? We all
This
good?
is the same
Good.
one at our last meeting, didn't we approve this?
It was
What did we
an
do?
advance that we did, so
Right,
that
it was
the
the
project
advance
can continue. This is gonna do the actual
And this
bonding,
is a-
this will take another 2 weeks for the money to come in.
And this has been approved by town meeting, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah, no, just-
yes, we had it
Money
was in your
for the
packet
others.
last time, the actual certified copy of that article.
Date of sale?
Date of sale,
Yeah, of the bond.
I don't have that schedule in front of me. I think it's. I'm getting confused between the two of them. It's within the next
Next few
week,
days?
I would say, yeah, few
Okay.
days to a week, because we're gonna have the money in 10 to 14 days.
So it's
Okay.
dated 20th
Well,
day of
this is
October
going through the
2016.
state though too, it's not your typical,
Oh, that's
Bonding.
right, that's right. This is not, right, okay, thank
so
you.
this is a little slightly different.
Okay.
Okay, now what is needed from this board?
I have the bond, and then I have, 3 copies of the certificate, that need to be signed by,
Finance.
by all the selectmen, and for Diane, we have to do that vote.
Yep.
Okay, so actually, why don't we just start with that, and there's 3 copies of that for you to to sign.
Sorry, I made you jump through hoops.
That's all right,
today on
you know,
legalese.
Bet we,
I can understand why you was uncomfortable with that, so I'm happy to take care of it.
2% spreadsheet.
This actually is just
So is there how many motions do we need, Kevin?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
How many, what do we need for motions here on this?
just one motion on this.
Yeah, there's the vote, the language should be right in there.
The motion
The
language? is
voted,
what?
right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
So I move that the sale of the 842,000 general obligation bond of the town dated October 28th, 2016 to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs is hereby approved, and that the town manager, the town treasurer, or any other town official are each authorized to execute on behalf of the town a contract loan agreement and financial assistance agreement and any other document with the agency with respect to the bond. The bond shall be payable at a rate of 2% per annum in semi-annual installments as set forth below, and there's a schedule that takes us from April 26, 2017, and a payment of $25,175.93 to through October 28, 2036. Each of the payments after the first being $25,643.61, and we all have this in our packet, so you can follow along at home, or not at home. Further voted that each member of, further moved that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, the town clerk, the town treasurer, and any other town official be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing vote. So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, is this a roll call vote, Wanda? Why don't we do a roll call
Yeah.
vote, just to be safe?
Jack and Eiley, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Kevin McCarthy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Steve Gomer, aye.
Okay, motion passed, Tracy, unanimously. Now, what do we need to do?
And then I think I'll just read this. I'm gonna sign a document. It's required that the clerk of the Board of Selectmen sign a document that certifies that the votes were taken at a meeting open to the public, that no vote was taken by secret ballot, that a notice stating the place, date, time, and agenda for the meeting was filed with the town clerk, and a copy thereof posted in a manner conspicuously visible to the public at all hours in or on the municipal building, that the office of the town clerk is located or if applicable in accordance with an alternative method of notice prescribed or approved by the Attorney General as set forth in 940 CMR 29.032B, at least 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays prior to the time of the meeting, and remain so posted at the time of the meeting that no deliberations or decision in connection with the sale of the bonds were taken in executive session, all in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsections 18 through 25 is amended. So all I'm doing is certifying that this meeting was properly posted for this
Okay.
bond issuance.
You don't need a vote on it, you just issue, okay, you're gonna go ahead and sign that?
Yep.
Alright, is that done, what do you need from us now?
Everyone needs to sign 1 green and 3 white.
Wanna do it now so we can get,
3 green,
no.
one, 3. How did you ever get through school?
Yeah. Very easy.
Part of the FDA, Fathers Against Dyslexia. Don't go looking for free copies.
Paula, do you want the certification, or should I give it to Tracy, or take it, thanks? No, that's not.
It's either printed and checked out,
That's right. The old days.
at least enjoy these 2% interest rates while we can.
Yeah.
And trust me, they'll be here for a while. Good. We're on track for 1.2% annual growth. That's not bad.
I have to sign it too.
Yep.
Well, you're just gonna wait a couple more hours.
Very good.
I think it's borrow more, 175.
You can go ahead and try.
Thank you.
Okay, she's
I
still
think
gonna,
that's it, right?
I won't confuse her if we all set, caller, if we,
I think we're all set, and that's the last one. Thank you very much.
thank you very much,
Paul.
Paul.
Thumbs up and
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion on the warrant article that is proposed by the Conservation Commission. If anybody's here to represent the Conservation Commission on the warrant article, come forward, please identify yourself and commence the discourse. And that article's on our warrant you have before you folks.
Hi, Patrice Goldman, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. I don't know if you have received the binder, whether or not Chris had provided to you the letter from our special town council, but I'll pass it around.
Yeah, I had emailed this to all of you, but
Mhm.
this is,
Did you email it, or is it in our packet? I think you
yeah,
emailed it.
I think I emailed it.
Okay.
I emailed it before the last meeting.
Yep.
I don't know that, I don't think I,
No, I don't think I.
Okay, let me do this, Patricia, go ahead and discuss the article, the relevancy of this, and more or less present, so,
Right.
and also so the public can understand what it is that's
Sure.
being
So,
discussed here.
That's all right.
I'll send it electronically, yeah.
so, this is a lot of, legalese, so I'll just try and boil it down to, what we're doing. We have a town bylaw, that has in it the opportunity to do non-criminal disposition. So it means you ticket people if they don't, if they do something wrong, and then you have an opportunity to, and if they don't correct it, you have an opportunity to ticket them, or you have an opportunity to take them to court. On the advice of town council, took somebody to court for something that was egregiously done. They dumped lots of dirty fill, and they didn't do anything about it for 2 years, so we kind of pressed it, and it's a court case right now. And upon reviewing our bylaw, special counsel suggested that while the intent of our bylaw was to provide for non-criminal disposition, the Massachusetts law requires that you have a specific penalty in your bylaw. And you can't use the phrase up to or no more than, because that's not a specific penalty. So what we're doing here is changing our bylaw to have that specific penalty, so that we're not changing the intent of the bylaw, we're strengthening the bylaw so that if we choose to use it, we can in effect execute it. So, when would we execute it? It doesn't change our ability or our discretion when to use it. Really, we don't use it except in pretty unusual circumstances like this particular case, where we'd like to recover the cost of special counsel and, the cost of special counsel on any litigation, and this being able to, levy, a ticket, or give them a ticket for the number of days where would allow us to recover the money for counsel, and it would be enforceable under Massachusetts law. So that's why we're requesting, it really came up in the context of this litigation, and special counsel recommended we change it right away. So the two key points that I would like you to take away are, one, we're not changing the intent of the bylaw. The bylaw was always there to be able to do this ticketing, non-criminal disposition as it's called in legal parlance. And we're only applying this specific penalty so that it is enforceable. And the second item is it doesn't take away the discretion. It doesn't mean you have to ticket them, or that suddenly we're gonna go out and write tickets of $300 for everybody who drops a Kleenex or something. We have it there, and it's a tool in our toolbox that we can use.
Okay, so, if I may, just so I'm clear then, what we have now has never been enforced or used, we've never, is that correct?
I think I would defer to what town council says. I don't know if we have used it or not, or he's just suggesting that we make the change to make ourselves bulletproof.
So, and that was the second question I had, is essentially is not properly enforceable, is what our council is saying.
If it
Or it's
went
not
to
enforceable.
court, it could be a loophole that we might win the case but not get the,
Because it's not enforceable?
Right. because it doesn't have the quote-unquote specific penalty.
Okay, Paul, and then Steve.
Yeah, so it's I guess it would be a ticketed offense versus a fine, is that?
It's called non-criminal disposition.
Okay.
The special counsel refers to it as, in effect, like a ticket.
Okay, so a fine would be a criminal, when you say criminal offense? I'm just trying to find the difference between like a fine and a non-criminal disposition.
I don't know what a fine is in legal.
Okay.
Yeah, criminal is you
So
know.
So for all practical purposes, this would be a levied fine at a given level, fixed for someone who did something wrong from the Conservation Commission point of view.
Right.
That's it.
Steve?
Who would serve as the magistrate for any appeal?
So I believe it's Superior Court. We take them, we go to court and see who we're with here. Yeah, Superior Court.
So, for orders under which the alleged violator is getting a ticket, we're forcing them to court. Would that be the normal course of action
Yes.
anyway?
Yes, that's what we're doing anyway. That's exactly what we're doing right now. And as a result of that, special counsel has recommended that we change the bylaw to ensure it's enforceable in Superior Court.
Why $300?
It was in the original bylaw. We're not changing
Okay.
the amount. It says
Okay.
up to, and that was the recommendation of special counsel.
That's the specificity.
That's the specificity, that's correct.
Okay, Steve, you set? Diane?
Yeah, I just wanna clarify, and I don't know if this is for Chris or Patrice, but my understanding is this proposed article seeks to add an amendment to our general bylaws. So this would be,
It should be titled Amendment to Cohasset Bylaws, not the Wetland Bylaws, because it's.
but there's, the second piece of this would be an amendment also to the wetlands.
But that's part of the bylaws.
Yeah, so it's
So is this one change, or, because it looks like two?
It's actually,
one change in two different areas, I think would be the way I describe it, Chris.
there's a change in the general provisions which apply across the board
Okay,
in the top.
Yep.
It's actually the very beginning of the whole bylaws. And then in the Wetlands Protection Act, where it references back to
okay.
the act.
So as Patrice said, it's one change in two different places, and, what was I gonna just say? sorry, I lost my train of thought, so we would have to discuss just changing the title of that.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself as I realized that it's two sections of the bylaws, it's not just a wetland section of the bylaws.
So, if I may, the other question I had was, so changing this bylaw changes any non-criminal disposition, so it could be, as, town council in the opinion noted, it's not just a conservation commission change. It allows us to fine $300 for anything else,
Well,
the dog catcher?
Well, no, if there's not a penalty otherwise referenced, and there was, so in the so I believe there are penalties scattered throughout the bylaws, and you can find them. So there's already a penalty in there, and that's what you use.
Right.
This is the default for non-criminal, and in fact, it reads here that if there is a penalty for criminal, you use that for non-criminal as well. If there isn't one, it reverts to this.
So,
Which, by the way, there is if the question is there a potential to be some unintended consequence of the
Yes.
bylaws? Yes,
okay,
because no one's done a full check
right.
to make sure that there isn't some obscure section of the code.
So if Concom came to us with this, they're requesting this change, but might it impact Board of Health or somebody else that has something, in which case we probably should?
Most of them have, many of the sections that are in use already have penalties clauses, because they're used, like the Board of Health has their own set of penalty clauses, because they're actually enforced from, they're the section that's actually enforced more regularly, and they actually don't sit in the bylaws, they're the regs. This wouldn't affect the regs, for example.
Okay.
The regulations, for example, for the liquor regulations are outside the bylaws, so that this wouldn't cover, this wouldn't change any of the penalties that are already established in the liquor bylaws, for example.
I guess I would like to know what other unintended consequences there might be with this particular piece for the general bylaws.
That's an excellent question, and I wish I could answer for sure.
Okay.
We are going through the clerk's office is going through a whole recodification and review of the entire town bylaws as part of a project that was approved last year to clean up things, and that's still ongoing. That would be able to identify for us areas where there might be gaps or missing items, like no set schedule of funds. I mean, one thing you could do, I guess, is to limit this to section 14. I mean, you could say that the non-criminal association of $300 is limited to Article 14, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and then adjust it later. I am making this up as I go here, but that's.
All right.
It appears that the intent, well, I shouldn't say it appears, the intent seems to be by the proponent to apply this specificity to the wetlands bylaws, so they have if you will, an applicable tool to enforce their role, right? And yet, the question arises with respect to how this is put forward as to whether or not you're essentially providing a machine gun where a fly swatter will work. So from that perspective, if this were, I'd feel much more comfortable for this to proceed to the warrant and discussion in front of town meeting if it were specific to the wetlands bylaw rather than a wide-ranging tool for any non-criminal disposition where it might be applied.
Okay, so.
Without review of that.
Right, no, and by the way, that was an issue that special counsel did acknowledge, that there's a bigger issue in the bylaws. And he wasn't going to look at every single aspect of it.
But we could confine this to this if we wanted to change the
I
language.
think you could, remember, yes, I think you could, but again, I'm not town council, and section 1H is a general catch-all that authorizes criminal and non-criminal disposition penalties
Right.
throughout the bylaws, and just the way it's structured, and again, then the Article 14 has, in terms of wetlands, has a specific,
Yeah, Jack.
So the language says, if no specific penalty for non-criminal disposition of a violation is set forth in a particular bylaw provision, the The specific penalty for non-criminal disposition shall be the same as the maximum criminal fine set forth, but no more than 300. So, you know, our potential issue is a $300 fine for some bylaw that says you have the ability to levy a non-criminal disposition. You know, I was on the governance committee with Kevin. I can tell you there's maybe 3 or 4 places in the bylaws that affect this. I don't think we're talking a big impact here. So the question is, I think for us, is it, you know, do we narrow this, stop it, or continue with it based on, you know, maybe limited risk? I mean, I'm okay with it the way it is, but if you wanna limit it, I'm okay there too. It just makes more work for us going forward.
Just, it would have, too bad this could have been made right in the wetlands. Why wasn't it made inside that?
I think they're linked, okay, I mean, the general authorization appears to supersede. The general authorization issue fines is at the top of the bylaws. And then where there actually are penalties, that references the power that's issued at the top. Again, I'm not sure the council will give you a clear answer anyway, but that's my understanding of how this works.
Just, you know, one suggestion would be, I mean, we haven't voted to put this on the warrant.
Correct.
So that's one thing we need to do today. I would feel, I think, comfortable putting it on, and then you know, giving Chris some questions that we would like answered, like, could we put just the wetlands piece on and get rid of the other, or would that negate the whole thing, or does the general bylaw, you know, could Concom actually set this up as as some kind of a different schedule, like the liquor regs? Could they set up regulations so that we don't need a bylaw change? I mean, I guess I'd like to know a little more about the meat of this. We can put it on, and then if we decide we don't have the right answers, we can decide to pull it off and not take it up at special town meeting. I mean, just a thought. I still think there's a lot of questions. I don't know what the conversation.
Well, don't we have to, does this have to go to print out in a few days?
This has to go to print next week.
So we're really
So
keen.
tonight is the last night for but
You can make
In the
changes.
motions, we can indefinitely postpone.
yeah, remember this does allow for modification. If it turns out that it could be modified, we've done that
In the
before. You can
motions.
present a modification of the motions that tightens it. I'm sorry. Ben.
Yes, sir.
Oh, good.
No, no.
Hold on.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, my reading of this, I think the paragraph A, I think supersedes the others, and then you have an amendment or a subsection below that, which allows you basically to clarify where those violations will occur. So it looks like the first paragraph supersedes the other from a point of view of the legal and the how to draft your fines, basically. It gives you the option. I presume there are gonna be others where it's a dog license or something like that, where they're already inherently in their bylaws of the fees accordingly.
$8.
Right.
But that section A is the piece that I would wanna know what the unintended consequences might be. Where else might this trigger a $300 a day,
Right.
you know, non-criminal disposition, which is something we don't necessarily wanna do unless we're clear on where we're doing it.
And I think, again, it doesn't take away the discretion, so you could be speeding down the street, the officer pulls you over, do they give you a ticket, do they give you a warning? What do they do? The discretion still remains there, we haven't taken away that.
I can tell you by personal experience, they give you a ticket.
But it doesn't have any
You're
impact
going
on those
that
kinds
fast.
of, those are all those are different.
Right, that's what I wanna know where it would be impacted.
It's really only a place where there's no penalty line set.
Right, through,
Right, and this is one of the cases where it was vague, right? It was
right.
up to, which is not really enforceable, right? So that was the point of tightening it. One of the things that could be looked at, I think, either for the spring or for the future, is coming up with some penalty charts for different things. That's probably not a bad idea, because I don't think there's a lot of that. The bylaws are the first step is to get the bylaws clean,
Right.
so they can be much more easily amended.
Right.
And then, which is coming up, that's
We've
teeing up
talked
for the
about
spring.
fees, yeah.
There's gonna be a whole amended look of the bylaws, which will make them a lot more easy to clean and fix. I also have a better idea what's actually what potential conflicts, so one of the things that's going on is a conflict check now, we've already found one or two, that there's parts of the laws that say different things about the same subject.
Okay, so what do we wanna do on this then? Have we heard enough, and then possibly when we come to this in the warrant, we will just vote to put it on the warrant, cause we haven't done that yet, and then what do we wanna, you wanna list the questions that we wanna have now, or how do we wanna proceed, folks?
Yeah, I make a motion to place Article 9, amendment, and that would change the wording, amendment to pass the bylaws. Article 9, as it's stated.
Okay, that's one amendment relative to this, I guess we can take that. Second on that?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Steve?
Yeah, I am in favor of placing an article on the warrant to provide for the enforcement of the wetlands bylaws specifically. Okay, I'm not comfortable, I wouldn't feel at ease putting something on the warrant in which we are providing a potentially larger power than was being requested to departments that weren't, or not departments, I'm sorry, to administrative functions that weren't requesting it. And that's, I think, where Diane is saying, is asking the question with respect to unintended consequences. What are we doing? If there is a way to administer this article such that the enforcement order is specifically assigned to the Conservation Commission, then I think it achieves its purpose.
Okay. How does that, is that in response to the motion? We still have a
Yes,
motion?
that's in
Yeah, okay,
response
yeah.
to the motion.
So, cause the motion would change the title, and that's
I'm-
rationale for doing it.
Yeah, I'm simply discussing the
Yeah,
merits of the motion.
That's fine. Okay, any other discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, no further, we'll call for vote, all those in favor say aye.
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 I'm gonna abstain, just because I'm confused, so.
Do you wanna rehear the
No,
motion?
no,
so
no,
we can-
it passes, so it's on, that's great, I'm happy.
Okay, so it's,
So now
I
it's
just want to
called, now it's
abstain.
called amendment to Cohasset bylaws. Instead of memo,
amendment to
to
Cohasset.
Cohasset
Yeah,
that
wetlands
was the
bylaws.
motion.
Yeah, because we're amending, the first paragraph is the general bylaws. The second one is the wetlands.
Wetlands.
Do you wanna complete your task and check the remaining votes?
Yeah, you mean, is there any, those in favor said
You've already called for that.
for, opposed,
I oppose it for the reasons stated.
and abstain?
Passes, but I just wanted to make sure the votes are
Yes, 3, 1 opposed, 1 abstain.
So the next step, right, would be for us to give you some questions to come back so we can figure out whether we are gonna recommend this to town
Well,
meeting.
right now, it's
Yeah,
on,
it's
it's
on.
on it,
It's on.
it's on the.
I understand that, it's on, but that doesn't mean we're gonna recommend the article, or that we're going to even,
No, but the article as presented is on the warrant. There is no motion before us to change the article itself.
So why don't we just say, approval subject to more, you know how we usually, you can vote on it at the meeting floor?
right.
I don't think we can do that, well, I think we have to vote, when we vote on this.
Yeah.
We've gotta either vote on it or not to do side stuff, I think it's
It-
probably not proper form, and would create a lot of.
May I suggest that assembling the warrant is its own task,
Right,
okay? Assembling the recommendations is a separate task.
Right.
The objective at hand tonight was to find out whether or not this article goes on the warrant. There are certainly other questions, which can be addressed before we take steps to make recommendations on this or any other article.
Right.
So we might wanna consider taking other articles in series, with respect to recommendations, get through what we can get through, and mark those articles that have remaining questions before we're ready to vote for recommendations.
Sounds good.
I mean, their thinking is, this is on the warrant. It doesn't mean, again, that we might vote to indefinitely postpone it in the motions. If you know, in my opinion, if we don't have answers to some of the questions that we've talked about this evening, so,
Well, then technically, what would that be? This would be then written into the warrant, only at town meeting, we would say that it's, because this is gonna go to print and sent out
Right.
next Tuesday, right?
This will go to print next week, and it'll go out, and it'll reach people's homes by, I think, because of the holidays, we're shooting for the 10th of November, so we're not late. The motions will still be drafted, obviously, between now and then, and there's 2 selectmen's meetings between now and the actual special town meeting. So between now and then, and by the next meeting, I'll have some clarification from council, who's looked at this 3 times.
Right.
And not said anything about these issues, though I wondered myself.
Mhm.
And I will ask again very directly and say, so what's going on with this? Can this be limited? Is this limited? Because there's no other issues in the bylaws. And
Right.
if it's not, is there a way to make it limited?
right.
And then I'll present that to you at the next meeting.
Okay, so to be clear, then we'll have those 2 questions answered and you'll bring this to the next meeting, at which time we can then bring this up and vote whether or not, vote on this. Or one of our votes might possibly be, that we vote to
Definitely postpone.
pull it
We
off.
definitely postpone.
And even though it's in the warrant, we'd explain to town meeting, this has been taken off.
Happens all the time, or in the motion, it addresses one section or another, or, and, it would be great, Patrice, if you could come back when we have that recommendation, just so you can provide the feedback from the commissioners as well, in terms of recommending the article.
They did recommend an
Okay.
article. It was part of an executive session. There's no vote on it because special counsel recommended it wasn't required of a vote and it
Okay.
needed to be a bylaw. So,
Okay, so that's
We'll
been vetted
vote.
amongst yourselves.
definitely,
Yep.
definitely.
So we should probably remove that line if they didn't vote in public, we don't wanna,
No, there's no vote in here.
right.
Right.
No, I mean, just remove that, the fact that they're gonna be providing the public a vote.
Well, I think they're planning.
Well, Chris asked me to do that just this afternoon.
Oh, all right.
So
okay.
if we need to do that, we'll do that. That's the
Okay.
first I heard about
Okay.
it, so we'll put it on the agenda, first thing, next
Great.
meeting, and we'll have it.
Okay.
It's a new experience. I mean, so this is actually nice for a committee to do, and they've been working with special counsel, so.
Great.
Right, we just wanted to, it's important that, we can, if we have, it's important that it's enforceable.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
Okay, so then to sum up, this will be on our agenda on November 7th, and we will be voting on this one way or the other, okay, board?
So Chris, do I need to do, before we close, do I need to do anything with special counsel, or is that gonna go through you?
Yeah, I'll follow up with council, and if you want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, that would be great, just so we're on board.
We'll set something up.
Okay?
Okay, thank you very much for your
Yeah, thank you very
time.
much, Patricia. All right, the next item on our agenda is, recommendations on the special town meeting warrant. So we have the warrant before us. Why don't we go through the articles, and I think we need to make recommendations we can, because this is going to print, what, next Tuesday or Wednesday, you said? So this is, whatever. What we'll do as we decide. So why don't we start with the first article?
Oh, no, they just reported it to me.
I understand, but do we have to vote on it or anything?
You've already put out the warrant.
It's already in. All right. First article is disposed of. The second one is the amendment to fiscal 2017 operating budget.
Move that, the Board of Selectmen, vote to recommend Article 2 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been first and second. Any discussion? No discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That's unanimous. Tracy, the third one is unpaid bills from previous fiscal years. There's 1 bill here. Any motions relative to this, or?
I motion we recommend to town meeting Article 3, unpaid bills from previous fiscal years.
Second.
Motion's been first and seconded. Good discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. None. That's unanimous, Tracy. Okay, the fourth one is stabilization funds. And any motions relative to
I make
this?
motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend Article 4, the following stabilization funds, source of funds, as stated.
Second.
Okay, it's been motions first, seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Steve?
Directed to the town manager. Chris, the values identified are $500,000 to general stabilization, 721 to capital, which I understand is a circulation.
Part of it.
A part of it is a circulation, but a substantial part of it. 250,000 to the sped fund, and then 150 to OPEB. And the question is, just generally, the largest liability that we have is OPEB. Why the smaller amount?
This allocation puts the town at its goals for stabilization funds ahead of schedule, which then allows future flexibility. It means we've now hit our goals. We can tweak, providing there's no crisis, right? We have the ability to tweak as opposed to have to put large sums in, and now allow us to focus on OPEB primarily. So there's already about $350 previously allocated at annual town meeting, so it brings the total contribution to $500,000. So this is a supplement to that. So
No, I recognize that it's a supplement, but thinking ahead, as an example, this past appropriation was $350,000. Given your scenario, that we would have greater flexibility to focus on that, what are we generally thinking for future years? $500,000 is an appropriation?
yeah, I
greater?
think the goal is to continue to make some tweaks to see where we can adjust, the long-term liabilities, the actuarial liabilities, and then to ramp up the amount we contribute as close to the ARC as we can.
Okay.
The annual amount of money we need to supplement to bring us up to full funding.
Right, and for anybody who's not familiar, the cash amount that's required to meet the current obligation is the ARC, the annual required contribution, which, if I remember correctly, is above $1.5 million now.
Yeah, something like that. And we pay as you go a chunk of that. It's the money to put away for the future that we're reaching towards, but we're not quite there.
Right.
I'll get to you. You set?
Yeah.
Diane?
Yeah, I just bouncing off that, one of the things I looked up, so I have, it's kind of an administrative question, which I brought up one of this from last year, but I don't think it's current. Is the current budget posted on the town website? If it may be, but I can't find it, so it might just be something to try to get in a easier place to find.
There is the visual budget, which I believe has updated numbers in it, which is not that. It's that big box chart
Right.
document you can
Right.
play and manipulate with that, which is accessible from the town website.
Right, cause this says here we put in $100,000 in OPEB.
But that was the base contribution in the budget.
Right,
Town meeting also allocated an additional $250,000
great,
in the last meeting article.
that's right, so that was
Based on
$350
meals and
last
hotel
May,
tax.
plus 100 here, and then same with for capital stabilization, we put $1,070,000 in
Right.
at town meeting.
Correct.
This is another 721, so that'll bring that
And then, but 371 will come right back out.
correct for the other, for the
So 350 will go
articles.
in, and then based on where we are, with the money that was already allocated special, and annual, it'll bring the fund up to about $1 million, a little over $1 million again.
And then general stabilization, that, what will that balance be with this 500?
It should be closing on 3 million.
3 million-ish. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Steve?
So this is exactly where I'm going. Last year, we made a $100,000 allocation. The citizens petition directed another $220,000. But that's a one-time element.
Right.
Okay? And that's the reason I'm asking the question. We're making what amounts to, inside of a fiscal year, a $500,000 contribution against the $37 million liability. And while that's something, and many of our neighboring communities are doing nothing, my concern is that we do not have an embedded policy to contribute $350,000. We were actually, as a town, forced to do that by way of a citizen's petition for the bulk of it.
Right.
And so I'm looking at this and recognizing that while we're making our contributions to other funds to get us to levels that we are comfortable support our high credit rating, our fiscal stability and the like, I now think we need to look and talk seriously about what that activity is toward ramping up and what that specifically means. Because if we were ramping up off $100,000, it's harder to go to 350.
Right,
Right? So,
Um,
there, I'm done with this topic.
Yeah, Diane,
No, I
go
just
ahead.
wanted, one last statement, which is, this is the reason I brought up a couple weeks ago, that I would love to meet with the OPEB committee, so we can really talk about the
Yeah.
ARC, talk about what we're gonna do, kind of long-term, maybe long-range planning is hitting that next, I don't know, but as a selectman, I
Yeah.
definitely wanna have that conversation sooner rather than later, so that when we do the FY18 budget, that's something we're really conscientious about.
It would
present.
seem to me that this is sort of made for the long-range planning working group to make a calculation as to what this long-term debt looks like, and maybe come up with a figure, as Steve is suggesting. And I would see that as a figure that we can commit to on a policy basis that shows us at some point in the future this is gonna be paid off. And that may be 500,000 over 30 years or 35, whatever it is, but to me, that problem, that question is sort of made for the long-range planning group, I would think, to do. So I actually would mind us giving direction to the long-range planning group to take a look at that if they would. If
And
the board's okay with
some
that.
towns have borrowed to meet the obligation and then just pay the principal and interest on the note. So they borrow $30 million, throw it into the OPEB fund, and then
But
pay the note
it can-
off.
It can be done for pension obligation, you can have a pension obligation bond, but pension obligation bonds are limited by Mass state law.
Right.
For OPEB in particular, you can do it for, if you have an independent pension obligation for a town has their own pension, you can do it for a municipality that does not have its own independent financial fiduciary responsibility for a pension, you can't. You can bond for other things, take the money and transfer fungible to another aspect of the OPEB, but you can't, I'm looking at it with a true pension obligation bond isn't allowable in this municipality.
What-
So Hingham's done it, and a couple other towns have done it, I think Arlington's done it, we should just figure out how they did it.
That's
'cause
what I'm
I
saying,
don't
and I
know.
think the place to do this, if the long-range planning group would take this up, and then they could maybe incorporate working with OPEB to do this, so you're getting that direction from this board, I think. I don't think we need a vote on it, but that's the place and that's the body, I think, that's skilled to say that. Somebody, set? Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on this. All those in, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That's 5-0, that's unanimous, Tracy. The next one is the allocation of funds for one-time costs. You can see these.
I move that we recommend, Article 5, allocation of funds for one-time costs.
Second.
Sorry.
This is psychologically transferred motion. Could we hear it?
I'll second it.
You second it? All those any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None, that's unanimous, Tracy. Next is Article 6, which is capital improvements budget. And I think we made some moving around on this based on our conversation last time,
This was
in order
good.
to
This-
make things clearer
In fact, you
financially.
probably should formally add this article to the warrant just to be clean, because this didn't
Okay.
exist last
We're
time we
doing two
talked.
motions, yeah.
And this effectuates the conversation we had at the last meeting.
So this is the revised Article 6.
Well, this is it's.
It's a new one,
So it's
actually.
everything else got pushed up one number, so this is
Okay.
a new article that breaks out, all of these projects were in the one-time cost, now they've been brought to here, and the funds for this have now been rolled into the capital
Got it.
stabilization account.
Okay.
And capital last night voted 4-0 in favor of these projects.
So this is updated as of last night's capital budget meeting?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. This will require two motions, and we have one motion that would put this on the warrant.
I make a motion that Article 6, capital improvement budget, is placed on the town meeting warrant.
Second?
Okay, so first and second, any discussion? No, hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, that's unanimous, Tracy.
Can I
Then,
ask a question, Chris?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
ask,
well,
no, you
yeah.
gotta talk to the chair.
Well, because I wanna make sure that, I don't have a copy of the article you're voting on, and I'd like to look at it, because the last one I have has something on
Yeah,
it.
no, we took that, it's been removed.
Did you take that off?
So it's 275 for the phone system,
Yeah.
14 for the security upgrades to Deer Hill and Osgood, 12 for security bollards to the middle school, high school in Osgood, 40 for the Osgood first responder entrance, and 30,000 for the new man entry doors to middle school, high
Okay,
school.
and that's it?
That's it.
Okay, okay. That
Okay.
is what we voted on.
Okay, good.
I make a motion.
Check it, that's fine.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend to town meeting Article 6, capital improvement budget as stated.
Okay, so a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That's unanimous, Tracy. Next one, supplemental appropriations fiscal year water department budget. Is there anybody here from the water department? Oh, there is.
It should be fairly easy. Rolf Yesterday, Tad Lane, Chairman of the Water.
Welcome,
Ralph.
Hey,
welcome.
how you doing? It's pretty straightforward. We're just transferring money from our retained earnings account for projects or things that we've needed for a long time. And first one being $50,000 for our new truck with a plow that has actually already been purchased. It's been built through the town purchasing. What was it called? The town purchasing.
Yeah, it's been procured, and it's actually in their budget. They're just replenishing it from retained earnings, so they still have enough money in extraordinary maintenance, I think is what we took this.
Extraordinary maintenance, yes. And the second one is a transfer $90,000 from our retained earnings, again, to system maintenance budget line, upgrading the chemical feed system at Elms Meadow. This is in response to Flint, Michigan, actually, with the acid in the water, the acidic water, pH being very acidic at the meadow. So we took a proactive step of taking the pH and bringing it up to where it should be, because it was questionable of what it was doing to the pipes. We did a lot of testing in town with that water mix, and we found no issues at all with lead or copper. So we're good, and that's what that's for. And the last is transferring $100,000 from retained earnings for sludge removal budget line. This is for removal of the plant, water plant residuals in the water, which we've been doing every other year for the high organics. But this year, because of the drought, we've been taking water out of Lily Pond at a lower level, and everything's been a lower level, and it's been much more rich with nutrients. And so unfortunately, it's been much more, taking a lot more. So we're gonna have to do it in the fall, the spring. We have no choice at all. So that's what that's for. And now we're looking for cheaper solutions for it. But right now, we've budgeted $100,000 for it, which we're doing. And we're scouring the land for other people to do it. Pretty straightforward. Again, that's coming out of our retained earnings, which we have the money.
Steve?
Is there any recycled use for the sludge?
No, we're trying, looking for people to take it, and I think the nearest people to take it is many, many, many miles away. I think it was New Jersey or Maryland or something like that, and the cost would be prohibitive.
Well, I guess the question is, it's an organic material at that point, right?
Yes.
You were pointing out that it's nutrient rich that you're taking in. Is it fair to say that the sludge itself is, a reasonable compost?
We did do some compost on another variety of it, but it turned out to be compact. Once it dried down, it was dry at first, and once it got a little wet again, it turned into a cement.
Ah.
For gardening, it did not work. And so we've
Sounds like
given
my
up on
yard.
that idea.
So we can't sell it for people's gardens.
Or
You could sell it as brick.
Yeah, for paving, maybe. We can do for
The
paving.
house.
But we tried that, people
Garage.
weren't very happy with the results of that.
I have one final question. There's a notation on here, capital budget committee, and it just says in parentheses, not including sludge removal. Was there a vote by the capital budget
No,
committee?
we
on
did
it?
not vote on these.
They did review them, to be clear.
We reviewed them with the idea that, would this negatively impact the town's debt structure? But we didn't view that the capital purchases by water or the sewer enterprise funds come under our purview, that they're an independent fund, and the only thing we need to watch out for is a negative impact to the town's debt structure.
And did you have any views
Now, if we're
on?
wrong on that, we're happy to start opining and voting on these things, but
I think the bylaw, of course I haven't read it in a while, it has been amended, but the bylaw originally brought all capital expenditures under, because the fund itself, or the enterprise fund is an accounting mechanism. Any debt that's used for water or sewer is funded by the town's general obligation. And, you know, ultimately, the backing for the operation of both of these entities are the town's balance sheet. While either enterprise is charged with setting appropriate rates to generate sufficient revenues to cover its operating costs and hopefully a bit more so that, you know, future expenses can be covered. There's no guarantee that that'll happen, and we've all witnessed that in the past. That was the reason the original bylaw was set up to cover all capital expenses, and it specifically named utilities as a part of that. Having said that, I understand your point, and I was asking about this specific one because it just said in parentheses, not including sludge removal, and it said nothing else. I understand the source of the funding on this, so.
do you think capital budget should be hearing and voting on all
Yes.
capital expenditures of the enterprise funds?
Yes.
Should the enterprise funds then be flowing the money for those things through capital budget?
No, I mean, to the extent that they're self-funding, it's just, the capital budget's simply a review process, another set of
All right.
eyes, right? And a recommendation and an advice, because your charge is to advise, yours and advisories, as a matter of fact, is to advise town meeting, and then advisory, and then us.
Yeah, I
Liz?
can give you the exact capital budget, section 2, town bylaws. Capital budget committee shall be an advisory body of the town manager, board of selectmen, advisory committee, and town meeting. Committee is charged with the review, evaluation, and recommendation of any town meeting article intended to materially alter the enduring value of the town asset base or capital structure, including in-bond or debt offering or refinancing, lease obligation, or other liability for any authorized or proposed town meeting article. The committee shall review, evaluate, and make recommendations thereto for any town meeting article which meets the following criteria: acquisition of land or building, new construction, reconstruction, repair, replacement, or improvement of buildings, land, utilities, or other public facilities, waterways, and access thereto, drainage, streets, sidewalks, parks, with a cost greater than $10,000, or the purchase of major equipment, motor vehicles, office equipment, and other items has an intended greater lifespan than 30 months, or an acquisition cost greater than $10,000. And planning services, design services, or feasibility studies as defined.
So essentially,
So it probably does, but it doesn't specifically say.
Well, we would have voted
I
on
mean, it's
the
under
truck
waterways, I would think.
and the station upgrades, but we would have looked at the sludge removal process as being an operating expense.
Right.
So we would not have voted on that.
Right.
And I think it's fair to say that the capital budget committee was generally in favor of the pickup truck and the upgrade, even though we didn't vote on it.
I appreciate that. This started just because I wanted clarification on not including sludge removal.
No, look, let's get it right.
Okay.
Diane?
Yeah, so, because they didn't take a vote, just like with, well, my question with conservation, could we just remove that line? Because I don't wanna have a line that presumes that capital budget committee would have set forth a recommendation, because they didn't. Unless they're gonna do so and add it on town meeting floor. You know what I mean? Cause there's a list of recommended, the board of selectmen, so it does say capital budget committee, so we either remove it or we
we're tentatively having a meeting November 14th. I realize the warrant's already been mailed by
Which is fine.
It's too late,
If-
but we could vote on these water items on that, at that meeting.
Okay. And then-
Alternatively, if by chance that meeting doesn't come together, you can do it at town meeting and offer
Right.
your opinion at the
If they're
time.
gonna do a vote, that's great, leave them on in, yep.
And there's precedence for this, I mean, we voted, you know, on roof replacement and a few other things that you
Right, we
guys,
did.
so it's been inconsistent, but we've done it in the past.
So we'll eliminate the language not including sludge removal, right?
No, leave that
we'll
in.
leave that in.
And I'll put in here pending for town meeting or vote to be, something.
Whatever the language is
whatever the
And
normal
announce
language
it
is.
at the time, okay.
Can I just ask
Yes.
one question?
Yes, go ahead.
How much sludge is there, Rolf?
The bag is almost full.
So cubic feet,
I don't know that answer.
how big's the bag?
It's a big bag.
Big?
It's as big as this whole top floor.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Oh, so it's a lot of material.
It's a lot of material.
It drains, it sits there for months and it drains.
It's like 8 weeks
Water
worth of
bill.
groceries.
So it,
Yeah. At least.
so,
Yeah, and it, because of all the low water and all the organics in the water, because of that, it's just filled in so much quicker. We usually do it every 2 years, or slightly less, but now with the organics, it's just filled up. We did not budget this at all, because we didn't think it was gonna happen this year.
wow.
And that's where we're looking to replace that and transfer out of our retained earnings.
So, was this to get rid of the bag, or you gonna put a new bag in, or just emptying this bag?
It's empty.
Emptying the bag.
Emptying the bag. This particular bag, I believe it's an empty, this one, I believe they're emptying it.
So do they actually bring a dump truck in and fill it up and cart it off?
Yeah,
Be a big dump truck.
big stuff, a lot of stuff, a lot of trucks. It's all included where we're negotiating with different people, finding a cheaper source, a cheaper person. We've been sending it down to Connecticut, I think it was, very expensive, so no one else wants to get involved with it anymore, so we're trying to find someone cheaper. I think we may have found someone in Massachusetts, we were talking about, Northern, that we're talking to them.
Yeah,
So, and I got somebody else for you, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
okay. All right, we have a motion on this, we have a second, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, that's unanimous.
Thanks, Rolf.
Tracy, Rolf, thank you very much.
Appreciate
You
it.
jinxed yourself when you said I'll be quick.
Yes.
You were.
He was.
Okay, the next item we have is one that's Article 8, bylaw amendment, photovoltaic arrays. Is there anybody here from the fire department or anyone, do you want to discuss this? Do you want me to say anything about this before we discuss it?
Does anyone have any questions, or I think we've discussed it in the past.
Move that we place Article 8 on the special town meeting warrant.
Is there a second?
Did we already do that?
Yeah, we did last week,
Then-
last time.
Was there
Oh, it's on the
discussion,
warrant.
was there discussion that
Thanks.
this might come off?
No.
Or am I
No,
imagining?
there's a discussion, there's a question about whether or not we can do this. The state runs, it's the state's electrical code, and they do, the fire chief's goal is to get us into the national standards fast. And often you can do that. The council is of mixed mind as to whether or not this will be approved.
Shocked.
But at this point, my position is,
Go.
everyone's supporting of it. We'll see what happens, and if it doesn't work, then we'll find a different path. It doesn't hurt, because the goal here is to get nothing else, to get the state to move faster, but if we can move faster on our own, that's even better. Because these are going in, and the problem is the new standards put more protections in for firefighters and public safety officers that are responding. Unlike electricity, which you cut off at the main, these are still live when you're up, so you're up on a roof, and there's not enough room, you can end up getting electrocuted. That's not a safe thing with water and everything else that's up there. It's not a good idea.
Keith?
Yeah, just recognizing that in an abundance of caution, council may be trying to find whatever way we can or cannot do this. I'd argue that a vote to recommend this is a vote to recognize that the safety of our public safety officers is paramount. And it would hardly be an embarrassment to have to walk it back if by some way, shape, or form we have offended the sensibilities of the great legislature of the state of Massachusetts. So,
Yeah.
I move that we vote to recommend Article 8 as written.
Okay, is there a second? Just a second. Any further discussion?
Can I just make a
Diane.
point? I just wanna make a point, which is all this really, this bylaw amendment does is ensure that all photovoltaic systems installed in Cohasset will meet current nationally recognized installation and safety standards. So we're not talking about any
No.
project or anything, it's just a statement of fact, so. Statement
Chris,
of
who's
hopeful
this,
fact.
who's this gentleman? Somebody, is,
Question regards to that. What does it do to
could you
any
identify
systems?
yourself? Excuse
My
me.
name's Fred Siegel, resident of Cohasset. What does it do in regards to systems that are already in place? Does it have any
No,
effect?
it doesn't change things already.
Okay, so anything that's
It's
in
just
place stays what it is.
Okay, so we've got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That's unanimous, Tracy. On the next article here, we did, tonight voted that on the warrant, we will vote further on this at our next meeting. That brings us to the end of the,
What I would recommend you do then is to formally, just to keep protocols, to vote the warrant as a whole now, and then you need to sign it. And then we can get it processed.
You can get
And I
it.
think Tracy has the master sheet.
yeah, so what we'll do is, all right, do we have a vote to,
I make a motion, we recommend the town meeting.
You're gonna vote to,
Accept.
Make a motion to accept
vote.
and post the warrant.
Okay, so we don't need to make a motion.
No, you would,
Yes.
you probably
I'll
should.
make a
Go ahead.
motion that we accept the warrant for
For
the town of
posting.
Cohasset special town meeting Monday, November 28, 2016,
for posting?
for posting.
Second? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, that's unanimous. And we'll each sign this, and this will be what goes on.
Good.
Good,
Good work.
good job,
I
very
just have to
good.
get a quorum. So I'm working, by the way, to do
Oh.
we're working to do one of these, we tried at the last annual, we did a forum. We really only had 10 committee members come, but that's okay, we filmed it, they got shown on TV, so we're gonna try to do that again, the week before Thanksgiving.
So a warrant review
A
basically,
warrant review,
article
yeah,
review?
public warrant review.
We were gonna do that at,
We're gonna try to do it at the library, we can't.
Can't do it at
Sawyer
what?
Street is, I'm afraid it's booked, so we're trying to do it at the library.
sorry, because it can film good there, and then it'll be broadcast for anybody who wants
She
to
gave me
watch it,
two, I
right?
don't know.
Is there a second copy you wanna say?
Jen gave me two copies, I don't know, so, if you don't mind.
Just in case.
Yeah,
We sign
sure.
two?
Why?
We don't have a space yet for that.
Yes.
Is the library available? No, okay, that's gotta be at the high school.
School.
All right, it'll be in the school, I'll release more information about it at the next board meeting, but,
I sent you an email.
all right. We'll do it at the, school
Community.
community room.
Hey, you got that second one back?
Yeah, it's coming.
So, get a one-day liquor license.
That'll do it. Door prizes.
Okay? Steve, signature
Big
to
sale
sign.
out there.
Big sale.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the policy relative to public-private ways. Chris, you've been working on one.
So, based on, and again, everyone received this? Does everyone have this? Can I get a copy? Yes. Give me one second. Oh, you have it, go ahead. That's not, all right. Based on the comments, at the last board meeting, I cooked the conversation into, well, it's 8 points. And there's an objective, a quick definition, classification of private ways, what kind of assistance is available, a process, a liability cap, which we really should have in this. There's a section here about public education, making sure that realtors know that they have to let people know what road they're living on when they sell property. And then there's an implementation section which would authorize the town manager to work with necessary folks to either create new bylaws as necessary, and as well to search for, to explore funding mechanisms for, which we're looking at anyway for public ways, to potentially support a private way policy. So let me just read the objective. So it's to maintain the town's private ways in such a manner as to preserve and promote the health, safety and welfare of all town residents, to support the town's property tax base, to promote the proper care and management of private ways by responsible parties, and to ensure that town services are safely delivered to town residents. So that's the objective, and then we go from there. I had mentioned at the last meeting how our roads break out, and there's a chunk of, so that there's basically 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 of our ways are public and about 1/3 are private. And of the third that are private, there's a chunk of, if I remember this correctly, it's 12, I don't have that sitting in front of me, it's 12 miles are longer than 22 feet and 5 are not.
Wider than 22 feet.
Yeah, wider, 20 feet or wider, which makes them potentially subdivision, up to subdivision standards. Because that's required for public safety vehicles and among other things. Modern roads are actually even wider than that. Current complete streets have bike lanes and everything else, but these are all, we're talking about roads that were all built perhaps 10, 20, 40 years ago, so they're built under prior standards. That would be a category A. A category B road is one that's less than 22 feet, but it's still used. It's a street, and I use this term under legal frontage for zoning purposes because that makes it a street. A common other private ways, which are pretty much just common driveways, are really just access points. They're not used for frontage. Everyone's lot sits or attaches some way to a public way or another private way that's official in the sense that it was laid out pursuant to standards. So roads that are A and B are more, well, the categories A and B are they're more, I hate to use this term, road-like. C tends not to be. They're not designed to be roads. They're really designed to be limited access points, driveways, basically. That's really what they are. There are a fair amount of them in town, several miles of them when you add them all up, because some of them can snake into the woods. I know we have at least one staff member who lives, I think, half a mile off the woods on one of these. So they can be long, but they're still not roads, and they're never going to be designed to be one, and they don't generally have the same problems. So the big situation I think that we've discovered, that I've learned over the last 3 years, is that many if not most private ways in town were not set up with a system to maintain. The homeowners were never organized to maintain the way, to stay together, except in a place like Toll Brothers or Cook Estates, where there was or even Hundred Pond, where you walk into the complex, so you buy in knowing that you have a responsibility, and there's a common, there's a common need and a common responsibility to maintain the roads in the complex. Many of the roads that are private ways here were not done that way. They look like a regular street that you'd find anywhere else. And what people may or may not have known 20, 30, 40 years ago was not necessarily passed down as people moved on, if they even realized it at the time. You move into a house with a new road, you're not really thinking much about it because it's not going to be a problem in theory for 20 or 30 years. So what this does is it classifies the ways into these three groups. It then offers potential assistance, the category A being a full repair through a potential betterment, with potential tank contribution depending on circumstances. The category B roads can also get full repair with 100% of butter contributions through betterment potentially. And the category C, which are really just the common driveways, could ask for assistance in creating a homeowners association if they need something like that for the future. I think many of them, if you have interlocking easements, you're going to know in your deed. If you have to cross someone else's property to get to your own, it's generally something you would know, and you'd make sure that there's usually some agreement that passes from owner to owner about who has responsibility for what, which is not the case, unfortunately, with a lot of these private ways. The process is really the back of the page, and it requires a petition with a minimum number of residents petitioning. This process where Public Works would then estimate the costs. Town Council would assess any legal requirements if there's and need to acquire easements or do anything of that sort to immunize the town, even if it's acting, by the way, just as a contractor, retaining someone, and no town money is being expended. We don't want to be in a situation where someone sue the town for actually improving the roadway. I know that sounds like a crazy lawsuit, but, you know, it's not impossible. And you wanna make sure that's not gonna happen. Then there's a funding determination, and again, these are just conversation recommendations. The board could go in obviously a different direction on this. The 3A category being as close to a public way as you can get. There's a potential for funding here based on the fact that they're probably, those roads tend to be more used, they tend to be more heavily populated. And they tend to be built closer to subdivision standards. There's a public hearing requirement where the board gets all the evidence, hears public testimony, and then makes recommendations. There's also a provision in here if the category A road abutters would like to head to public way. It doesn't require them to. The primary purpose of this is to set up a repair mechanism. But there's also a provision in here if residents of a private way want to make it to a public way, and there's some sort of benchmarks to hit that people should look at. Whether or not the way connects to public ways or a public and a private way, so it's a main connecting road. The way leads or connects to a public facility, which would be kind of an important thing to maintain. Or the way, and again, this is to put some level of threshold, provide sole access to 15 or more homes or businesses or 50 or more residents.
The concept there being some element of density?
Yes. And the only way to do that is to put some numbers on there. And again, it's arguably you could go higher or lower. I mean, there's a threshold, one home, 2 homes, probably not a very big road anyway. You can have a road that's we have some private ways that are half a mile or more long, and those could have a fair number of homes on them.
Kevin's comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fair Oaks is one example, but, and there's only one way in and out, right? So, it's not as if there's other alternatives.
Right.
But, another argument on the density issue is there are roads, including mine, where people keep taking houses down and making their land, their lot size greater, so, if you have fewer homes, according to this, and again, I understand this is just, for conversation, but if you have fewer homes, you have to pay a greater cost share. If you have more homes, the town is willing to contribute more money, so it actually makes it
No.
more expensive.
No. These items, I think, as they're laid out, are items that would be considered if there were to be a petition to become a public way.
I see.
Yeah, this is only for the public way. This is
Only for the public way
This is only for
conversation.
triggers.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not for
Okay.
other funding.
Yeah. In other words, there's gotta be a standard,
Sure.
there ought to be a standard that we
For
would
public
apply
ways.
to consider
Okay, I
what
thought
could
it
become a
was-
public way.
For the-
But you
Yeah.
may have a very limited road, short road with very few people,
Right.
and the road is high quality,
Right.
and for that to become a
Public
public way,
way.
it would be far easier for the
need
town
to
to
meet.
accept for
Got
a
it.
public meeting vote
Got it.
than something not.
Yep, I understand. All right.
And again, these these didn't come out of the clouds. I mean,
Right.
I looked at a whole lot, and I talked to Brian at length about this, and he actually looked at an earlier version of this and kind of scratched his head, and he looked at this one and he felt much better about it.
So what we have here is, from a holistic point of view, has been tried and done in other towns and municipalities. It's a composite of it,
Yeah.
not a composite, but I mean, the essential elements of it.
There's nothing radical.
Yeah, there's nothing that I've made up out of whole
Yeah.
cloth, right? There's something,
This
Arlington's.
is similar to other policies in other municipalities that have worked for a while, am I correct?
Dedham has a very comprehensive policy, did a lot of looking at that, but Arlington is one too, that's very geared to private way rehabilitation through betterments. And they even have triggers that you can't even get to that unless you have you gotta have a homeowners association, and you have to, have hit certain thresholds for the town to even engage in a betterment conversation. And Arlington is a pretty built out neighborhood. I mean, that's been a built out community for many years. This just sets up a framework for having a conversation. Now, I've also talked to council, so I was on the phone with Council Ross today about this. So, he said, you know, policy issues are really, you know, I'm always willing to listen to him, but I said, it's not my call, it's the board's. So is there anything fatal in here? He said, no. And he said, there are maybe a variety of ways of approaching this from an implementation point of view that may not require bylaw changes. I said, well, that's great. So we're gonna go through, providing you, providing this or some version of this gets adopted, the next step would be, okay, let's implement, let's figure out how to implement. Do we have to make some bylaw changes? Are there other provisions of state law that allow us to do certain things? So that's one of the reasons that, one of the things that's led us here is that our existing bylaw just is not effective for anything other than putting down some potholes, filling some potholes so the plows can get through or the you know, the fire truck can get through. And that's not really what we're talking about here. There's a bigger issue.
And this does not remove the fact that if you wanted to have the town accept a road as a public way at town meeting with a majority vote. So you still can go ahead, should you want to
This
have the
doesn't-
town accepted, it still allows that.
Yeah, I mean, if a group of residents want to petition the town to accept the road, they can still follow the state law provisions. It says that this doesn't block that. This just provides a smoother method where if it comes to the board and the board of selectmen says, yes, we're on board, here we go, it gives you the institutional impetus to go forward, which is,
That's what we want.
yeah, there's an incentive to come this way if you meet the requirements, because that way you're getting support of the town's institutions. You could still, but I mean, again, you know, town meetings can do whatever they want. I mean, but there is I think there's a tweak about what percentage of vote you need depending on how it's presented. And I don't claim to know all the nuances of that.
Okay. Steve?
So what I see out of this is that, you know, a clear understanding, or not understanding, clear statement of objective, which I think we've discussed broadly, and the basis for you know, a policy stands there. I think as part of the objective, we ought to also recognize that this is not a policy for a one-time fix, but rather it is intended to put in place an ongoing structure, right? But not an ongoing structure for the town to be on the hook for a regular request for repairs from, if you will, the same suite of roads on a regular basis, but rather a structure whereby the town can step forward and assist in the initial repair or repaving, and at the same time set up a functioning or encourage or require the construction of a functioning HOA, so that future liability of the town is removed, right? And I think a way to do that is, number one, you know, I'd say this to the board, the discussion throughout this is the use of betterment, right? As well as the potential for funding resource. And even for a private drive, I believe it's within the town's interest, depending upon, you know, meeting the review process that's laid out here or some variation of that. It's in the town's interest to use the betterment as an enticement and an incentive to address repair. But that betterment ought not to be offered without the construction and functioning of an HOA, a homeowners association. Okay, so that completes the loop, so that the process then becomes ongoing, and that's likewise supported. You might notice in here that there's a requirement to fully disclose to any purchaser of a piece of real property along a private way what those responsibilities would be.
Okay, want the selectmen to fully discuss this. I see a couple of hands in the audience, so we will take those questions, but I wanna have the selectmen discuss all this first.
One last point on this, and that is that, of course, the one piece in this that probably requires as much further discussion as the existing proposal itself is a funding mechanism. But the way this is designed at the moment, it actually lends itself to potentially using a type of revolving fund. I don't know if that is a legal term that appropriately applies here. But the follow-on to that is that this is a private way discussion, and any funding mechanism, I think, ought to include both public and
And
private
private,
ways,
yeah.
because our funding for roadways generally is a whole lot lower than it needs to be. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Diane?
Just a couple things, and I am gonna be honest, I have not had time to really look through this, so I hope that we'll have more conversation at another meeting, but just in terms of funding determination, this proposes that the category A people, so the ones that meet subdivision standards, am I reading this correctly, that they would not be eligible for a betterment? If it were a 50-50 cost share, but they could have a betterment on the 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It doesn't explicitly say that, and then it says private would be, so it says, may be eligible for a 50% project cost share,
Well,
contingent on 100% of the abutters agreeing to the project, but the thought would be that they could be assessed their 50% through a betterment.
right, yeah, and if you look in the public hearing piece of this, and again, this is just,
Yeah.
it says, the board shall hold a public hearing to determine whether, based on the report and evidence presented, the way is a candidate for repair, and this is for any of them, not
Mhm.
just. If so, the board shall assess a betterment for the entire cost of the repair, including the cost of any required legal proceedings on the abutting property owners. In the case of category 3A private ways, the board may reduce the betterment, so there is a.
May reduce
The betterment by approving a cost share in amount not more than 50%, or not to exceed 50%, it says not more than.
Okay, and then I imagine at some point, we should, or I would like, to have a conversation with somebody from ZBA or from planning, just about, what actually does 22 feet width mean, Does it have to be the entire street? I mean, I know on my street, it's 16, but then it's 22, and, I'm sure there's a lot of streets that aren't 22. So, I just wanna
Right.
make sure we define this
Right.
very specifically.
I think it's supposed to, I think it's defined as a minimum width of 22, and that should be.
From
continued.
start to finish.
Yeah, or that it can be up to 22. Remember, some roads, the town has, one of the roads that we turn out that's very historic, it's 40 rods or something like that, right? Well, the actual paving is only, 20 feet. We actually have 60 feet of right of way or something like that, which is much broader. Now, we haven't used it, in some areas it's probably not practical. I mean, I don't know on Beach Street, for example. I mean, even if you had a 10-foot right of way on both sides, you have to blast a rock to get to it. It's not practical. But there may be areas though where the road may vary like that, but it may be easy to get to 22 feet.
Right, I just wanna make sure, obviously, that, where our bylaws aren't, there's no wiggle room.
This is actually, 22 feet is actually less than some of the current subdivision
Okay.
standards, but it's a minimum for allowing two public safety vehicles to pass each other on a way. That was the threshold we used, is that you need 10 and a half feet
Yeah.
to get a typical fire truck. Obviously, police cars are narrower, or a fully decked out ambulance can also take up about the same width.
Yeah.
And that allowed two to either sit side by side or to pass each other, one going in, one going out. That's the basis for the 22 feet.
Okay, just one other little thing, which is on public education, I'd love to flesh this out a little more. I don't think we can say it's the responsibility of realtors, but, we seek the partnership of maybe, and one of the things that, I think I mentioned this at another meeting, what?
Strongly encourage.
Yeah, or just, we wanna work with people on this, because it's gonna serve all of our community better, and, I know that, and I don't know if there's even a path towards this, but the deeds, the deeds don't necessarily say you're on a private way or anything. I don't know if there's inroads we can make in that area.
Just a devil's
Or even
advocate
in
with.
text.
Yeah, I'm just devil's advocate.
Mhm.
So this clearly came up in the conversation that public education is a clear-cut piece. My prior committee had a rental registration ordinance, which I'm not recommending, I'm not suggesting that at
Right.
all. But as part of its implementation, realtors had to list the rental permit in the ad to validate that it had one before you rent the property. If you didn't, we could fine you. So number one, there was a requirement that the rental permit be in an ad. So you had to certify that the property had its permit before you could rent it. And that was all for public safety purposes.
Right.
We had a fair amount of rental property, and there were concerns from school districts and others about safety and things like that, so. So you, again, I'm not saying that you should do it, but I'm saying you most certainly can say, hey, Realtor, if you wanna work in town, provided there's not some state statute that limits this, you need to let people know. It's kind of like the, you know, isn't there a provision where if you have like a ghost or spectral thing in a house, sometimes you have to let people know that happened, right? It may be that the state has, you know, controls this, and it may just be that you just do a public education campaign and say, hey,
Yeah.
Realtors, let's just be good.
Well, at the same time, the town can do that when they send out tax bills, so, I mean, it's post facto, it's not probably gonna
Well,
get the
or-
partnership, the realtors, but
well-
when we send their first tax bill, you know, welcome to town, you know, please know that you're on a
yeah.
you know,
We can even
pathway.
update we can even make clear on the GIS, so if
Yes.
someone goes to the GIS, you pop up a house and you're like, you're on road, I'm just making up a road name, X, you're on road X. Oh, that's a
Tourism
private
Road
way, and
X,
it'll say that it's a private way. And I don't think that our GIS says that, but we could. I mean, we'd set it up so that the public would be able to find out the information on their own.
Using,
Great.
asking, or, you know, if the cooperation is not forthcoming, directing cooperation from the real estate professionals in town is actually within their code of conduct as a realtor, because it's a material disclosure. It materially affects the value of the property. So it's, you know, the question is really one of, if public education is not solely incumbent upon the realtor at transaction. I do believe that there are other elements of education where that applies. Maybe, you know, we could put a primer on the website as an example. We could use our real estate tax bills. But likewise, there is a duty of care for a professional realtor at transaction to make certain that this is understood.
And again, it's just in here because,
Yeah.
you know, to keep the.
We're gonna get to this in a second.
So just a couple things, so looking at the three road,
Is this on the whole thing, is actually what I'm gonna suggest on the process is I'd like to have Chris finish whatever he's presenting.
okay,
And then if we have any input maybe from the board and then from the audience. But then what I'm gonna suggest is that we go through each section on a broad basis to see if we agree on each section as a policy. If we achieve that tonight alone, then we'll know we have a policy, and then we can discuss the next steps in terms of refining it. So that's why in the stuff, we'll get to that in an orderly way, okay? So you finish your
Yeah,
presentation.
the only thing, this has, again, it's as Steve pointed out, there's an objective, there's some definitions, there's a discussion about what assistance is or is not available right up front. And again, this is all amendable in the future depending, or changeable now. There's a process for review, and then public education, then implementation. I mean, one of the key aspects is there may be additional work to do. So depending on how the board decides to go with this, we most certainly would explore some funding opportunities. And I've already started those conversations about what we could potentially do for public and for private ways. And then, you know, what legal changes might we need to make to the bylaws or to the regs or something else. So it's just important to know that this is the first step to get to those other actions. So that's, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's what we are.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Paul?
so a couple of things, so I look at the three roads, there's A, B, and C roads, which I'll call them, I think it's a standard road, substandard road, and non-standard road. I guess the one thing with a non-standard road is either private ways that are less than feasible to turn into a public way, that there's no means by which they can potentially have an easement, a betterment rather, for which is there. So I would probably consider adding that. The other one is there a means and mechanism by which you've got a standard A road that is subdivision standards? Could that be a mechanism for fixing it and then getting it adapted as a public way? So saying that 0 to 50% is what was, I think they're saying, total cost share. If that's done, then you would need to place it before town meeting to accept it as a public way. I'd like to see a mechanism for, if the town's willing to put in 50%, we really ought to consider that as potentially buying the road, and accepting it. That's just as a thought. Doesn't have to, but And the other one is, I strongly recommend where you've got a road C, which is the substandard, non-standard road, I would definitely recommend a homeowners association. That's probably the first step, because that really is the mechanism to get things accomplished at the local level in the neighborhood. Those are my comments.
It's, just as a point of clarification, the way that I read this, there is a mechanism for the residents on a Class A private way and possibly a Class B private way to petition the board to present to town meeting the recommendation for acceptance, okay? Now, the residents can always jump over your head and petition that. But the basis for the review and the recommendation from the board is so that there's an informed decision with respect to the advisability of accepting any particular roadway as a public way. And frankly, there really should be a reasonable benefit for the town to do that. You know, and there are some basic standards that were laid in here. Maybe there are others we could review as well. But ultimately, the town in this case is by way of policy stepping forward and saying, we recognize that these ways, as much as a third of our points of travel, create a base level of value to arrive at real estate, which is the core of our fiscal capability, right? We're a residential tax base. So it's in our own best interest to maintain some standard of, minimum standard, and there is a mechanism for getting there. And by the way, I'm in full agreement with you. I think any homeowner should have access to betterment. However, on a private way, that access to betterment is contingent upon the formation and an active homeowners association.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments on the board?
Yep.
Jack, sorry.
So I just, I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
If you go to section 3 and we start defining what the private way shall be, B says a way that has a maximum width of less than 22 feet and is utilized as legal frontage for zoning purposes. So tell me what a legal frontage.
It mean, you have to have been, there's other ways of, to probably better describe that, but what differentiates, at least from a practical or legal perspective, a common drive from a private way is that a private way is laid out as a road for subdivision purposes at some point. You know, is it accepted? When I say that, I don't mean accepted by town meeting, by the planning board or building official at some point as a road that met legal requirements for subdivision purposes. So you have legal lot frontage on it. But you
Okay.
can't have a legal lot without frontage in the town of Cohasset.
Right.
And I don't think at any time the widths have varied. What the difference with a common driveway is that the road is not for frontage purposes, it's purely for access purposes.
Okay.
And your frontage is actually somewhere else. And you can see those in town, where your frontage may actually be on Beechwood, but your driveway is actually, down the block and cut shape. So it's not a road, it's really just a driveway for access purely. It's not meant to.
Okay, so how about we have roads that are off Jerusalem that are called Jerusalem Road, but they're basically driveways that go up, and it's really not that. It's more how they've been legally defined
Yeah.
in the permitting process.
Yeah, there is a whole funny provision in mass law for roads to be laid out but not accepted, which allows you them to be, they're legal for development purposes, but they're not public ways.
Okay.
So the road then had some, even if it wasn't necessarily wide enough, it at least, it had to have met some standard at some point, because you could, it had to have been wide, either it met the width requirements at the time, maybe in 1927 it was only 20 feet, because horse-drawn carriages didn't, or the cars at the time didn't really need much more. Or it had some other aspects of a way, a public way, or even never became. This area is kind of real. It's really kind of, it's confusing.
So is the term legal frontage good enough to sort these out? Because you're basing the whole policy on legal frontage.
It's a road. There's probably more artful ways of saying this, right?
Yeah.
which I'm happy to, you know, if you have some better thoughts, please.
I don't, I mean, this is not.
No,
my
no, no,
area
no,
of
no, no, I know,
expertise.
but it could be, you know, that was laid out as a way, or something
Yeah.
like that, something that, you know, that was laid out for the purposes as a road.
This
Good.
is my point in trying to make sure that the language in this is artful as a bylaw
No,
somewhere, right?
right. And by the way, any bylaw change would have to be a little bit more clear. You know,
See,
part of this,
Yeah, if I may offer an example, my address is Pond Street, but my access to the property is on Holly Lane. I don't know if Holly Lane is 22 feet wide or not, but I assume that it is. It's very close to it. But the lots along Holly Lane all have frontage on Holly Lane. Holly Lane would never be accepted as a public way because it doesn't go anywhere. You know, it accesses, I think, 18 homes total, right? But having said that, it was constructed to subdivision standards at that time, which, interestingly enough, were about 1952. And there's an example of the intent, I think, of what legal frontage means. Having said that, my children grew up in my ex-wife's house, and I do believe her property fronts 3A, but her access is along a narrow corridor and a common drive that goes to King Street. Okay? The actual mailing address is King Street, but the frontage for purposes of construction of the property is along 3A. And there are other houses back there as well, as you know, because I think you've been back there in the past. And as you know, as we all know, there are lots of places like that in Cohasset. So we may be lacking on specificity with legal definition at the moment. But the question, I think, before the board is, are we willing to recognize that there are classifications of private ways that we need to use for priority? And then within that priority, use the expertise of DPW to start to rank the need of the projects. Because that's the basis
So
for
I
really
think this is
setting-
a great piece of work, right? I mean, I'm not, this is not a criticism at all. I'm just looking at this and I'm going,
that's a good
okay,
point.
what's what's legal frontage and what does that really mean? And I know it's a complicated question, so that's a comment I throw out. I just wanna follow up with one thing.
Sure.
So when you go to available assistance, I think there's some formatting things you can do to make this a little easier to read.
Yep.
So having said that, you say category 3C for assistance in developing or maintaining a local homeowners association. I'm just reading this for the first time and I'm saying to myself, what does that mean? How does that address the issue of having to maintain a private way? You're basically saying you can't get help, but we will help you do a homeowners association? And so when I read that, I go, so what? I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was my thought on it.
It may
You should
be,
be able to access
Yeah.
better.
it may be that, that doesn't even matter for, I mean, because those almost by definition have to have some mechanism to be maintained.
Right.
Because you're crossing a variety of properties, so there have to be interlocking easements
Right.
in your deeded rights, and then you have to have you and your neighbor may not like each other, but they still have to let you across the road, and they have to maintain the driveway. Anyone who buys a house like that, I would think their lawyer would be looking and saying, well, how do you get there, right? If you see a road, you may not think anything of it, but a common driveway doesn't look like a road typically, right? It's a driveway. It may look really nice. Some driveways in town are really very nice. They're lit and they have curbs, but it may be that those don't even need it. I mean, what's been driving this policy is the gap in a process to get some of these other roads fixed. So it may be that those don't even need the betterment, but it could also, as Dr. Schubert mentioned, you could add them in. I don't have any objection to it. I was just trying to rank them in a way of the most logical and probably the most people living on, the most fixable, to ones that spending any public money on those becomes a little weirder because there's you're literally saying a private property. A lot of the private ways sit as undefined, even though by law if you set on a roadway that's not officially accepted, you own to the middle of the road. In this case, there's no question. You're gonna see lot lines. So if you take the GIS and you pull away the road, you'll see lot lines. So there'll be no gap. There'll be no squiggly line like you'd find for a private way. I think I do agree, Jack, that it needs to be better defined.
Okay,
So.
Jack, anything else?
no, that's it.
Anything else on the board?
I'm good.
I see we have the chairman of the planning board who wants to say something. Would you stand up, identify yourself, please?
Yeah, Clark Brewer, chairman of the planning board. On the planning board, we deal with subdivision control law and A&Rs all the time. With that said, what Chris has put together as a methodology for trying to get a handle on the overwhelming number of private ways that we have in Cohasset, I think is great. Sounds like a great first step. I think it probably makes sense to get the language to the zoning board of appeals, as well as to our planning board, for some input. Because developers also have the ability to, use common driveways as a part of the A&R process. I'm just gonna say that the preponderance of private ways is sort of an organic, wonderful way that people have responded to the ledge and wetlands within Cohasset over the centuries, frankly. And having a higher than average number of private ways, I think it's good in a way. It makes Cohasset sort of unique, but has its own problems associated with it. The planning board under subdivision control laws essentially requires developers to create a subdivision with a right-of-way that meets subdivision control standards. These days, there are homeowner associations with each new subdivision that's created, but the purpose of the roadway approval, engineering, verification, sign-offs, and a great deal of rigorous review is that ultimately that roadway would be turned over to the town as a public way. That's the kind of path that subdivision control law allows for the town. And it's a surprise to me personally that there haven't been any private ways that have turned into public ways in the last couple of decades. Was it 2006 or 96, 94, something like 20 years. Because it seems like most people who are in a subdivision, they think they're living on a public way, and lo and behold, they're not. And there's a lot of, I think, fear about what am I responsible for? Can my neighbor park his car diagonally across, and whatever those fears and concern of being out of control and not having frontage on a public way, not having a kind of existing conforming lot instead of a existing non-conforming grandfathered lot. I think those assurances provide homeowners with a lot of confidence in what they own. And the private way system and not adopting private ways, moving private ways into public ways, I think is a great concern for those homeowners. It leaves a lot of things into the legal world that can cause problems, but I think it's a great kind of step and approach, and I think it makes sense to proceed with caution with as much information as possible. That's
Okay,
all I have.
so I want to ask the board then, it's essentially a suggestion that at some point we would send this policy out for comment with committees. Do we want to think about who that would be, and at what point do we want to do that so that we need to think about so that it's done in an orderly, proper way. So for example, what we could do is, I'm not suggesting we do it, we could pretty much finish what we believe would be the policy, and then, turn it over to Chris to go over it and ask to be on the agenda of these 4 committees. Or at some earlier point, we could go for input. So one way or the other, it seems to me we should do something like this. So how would we I would like to address it, how would we want to do that? Steve first and Diane.
with respect to the work that's gone into this policy, I think it's fair to say that the board has not had an abundance of time to examine it. And the discussion this evening is reasonably productive, but nonetheless, the board hasn't had a lot of time to examine it. I do believe it makes good sense to have the basis of the policy if we generally agree with the structure and the concept of, with respect to the objectives and mechanisms and the like. It makes sense to have this reviewed by council, of course, but also by planning board and ZBA for their input, and they've got expertise with respect to roadway layout and the like, and considerations that we may make. Ultimately, the policy lies here, and having, I come back to the same thing again. I have to ask the board to be honest with themselves as to whether or not you feel like you've had enough time to review the objectives, the definitions, mechanisms. Paul's brought up already a very cogent question.
Yeah.
So should we proceed tonight is a good question.
I don't think we're ready to distribute it. And myself, I think that we need to refine this more, and then we'll know when we have it closer to, so I would agree with you on that. Diane?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I didn't get this till I got home, which was about 6:15 tonight, so I'm really good with objective and definition, but I wanna deep dive a little bit and come up with more questions, I just feel. And I think ZBA and planning have to be part of it, council obviously, but, in general, this is an awesome start, and it gives us something to actually look at and for me to generate some questions on.
So we need to refine it more, and I think we're in agreement on that.
Well, what I'd like to do, unless the board has some objection, is actually to talk offline to, just to get some feedback.
Yes,
Sure.
as you're going through these
Right.
next steps.
Sure.
Yeah, to better define some of the definitions, which I,
So we can take this document, put it up on the OneDrive, and each one of us can write comments in it and do the edits.
Yeah.
And it's a shared
Just for us,
document.
yeah. Yes, but let's get to those next steps in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah, just one theoretical question that I wanna throw out there, not for an answer tonight, but, one of the things I keep asking myself is, why do we want to accept more roads as public ways?
I think it's a good discussion. I
Right.
don't have a ready answer, but at
Right.
the same
But I
time,
just think about that.
there may be a strategic portion of that either Chris or Brian Joyce have input on. I don't know that we most definitely would. On the other hand, again, we might, for example, one of the definitions of what could possibly become a public way could be a way that provides access to some number of homes or businesses, right? So one that just immediately leaps to my mind is Crocker Lane. You might look at that and say, why would we ever do that? But if you think about it for a moment, the abundance of population that situates along Crocker Lane on any given day, by way of the business buildings there, the sports complex at the top, the DOT garage up the hill, et cetera, one might look at that and say, you know what, strategically, that makes a good way for the town to acquire, because we want to maintain some minimum standards. With that level of population, you want to make certain that you can always get up and down that road with public safety equipment and so on. And likewise, we may one day wish to acquire that DOT space if we could do so. So there's an example of a possibility. Having said that, it does require a future liability of the town to acquire a public way, to adopt, I should say, a way.
Yeah. And I also think we're gonna have to build out some kind of a budget, Like, this is our, our money now that we have for roads. We have a schedule that's gonna use up 80% of that every single year for the public ways that we have to maintain. So therefore, there's 20% left over, which means we can probably handle a mile of public ways every 2 years, or whatever it is. I think we need to understand that, for both long-range budgeting purposes and also for setting up the process by which people can come and have a hearing. Because if there's no money, we may all think it's a great idea, but, so.
Well, I think there's, yeah, without a doubt, there needs to be funding
Paul,
mechanisms. Sorry.
Paul, again.
Just to comment on, because the town wants more more public ways. It may not, but this is a means to make it a little bit cleaner, should be accepted and have a basic understanding of what is involved and what is the requirements of it. So, I mean, for example, Fair Oaks Lane, I'm shocked it was never accepted, but there may be reasons that we wanna
Yeah.
park 1,000 people in the street and not have to worry about the police giving you tickets for parking or other things that are adaptable for a private way versus a public way.
Yeah, and I thought a good part of this is that we wanna create a framework or a possibility so that those neighborhoods that wanna consider this will then have a vehicle to answer those questions.
Right.
Doesn't mean that we're gonna force them or even encourage them to do. It just gives some clarity to the road life of the citizens in town, and by putting out a policy, that's part of the reason, I think, for doing it. But we can elaborate on this as we go. Anything further? I wanna see, was there one more comment from the audience? Briefly, if you identify yourself, please.
Fred Siegel, Bates Lane. It concerns me, this conversation, because I live on a road, that I've lived there for 32 years. First time I ever found out it was a private way was 2 weeks ago, when a neighbor said, you know, the way our road's falling apart, we're gonna have to pay to have it fixed. That was the first time I ever found out, and then I called town and found out, yeah, it is a private way. None of us ever knew that this was a private way. It was built as a subdevelopment with the intent of the road being turned over to the town. We don't know why the road was never turned over or why it was never taken forward, but that needs to be part of this conversation to figure out why some roads that were constructed as part of developments were never taken that next step to be turned over. Because for years, 32 years, I've been paying real estate taxes, and yes, the town comes through and plows, but my road's falling apart now, and I'm now at the point that I'm gonna have to contribute a massive amount of money to fix a road up that we thought was a public way.
You get the majority of the board here sitting
Yeah,
on
we're all in the
private
same
ways,
places.
so we hear you, and we have discussed it over the last
Yeah, I mean,
couple of
it was-
meetings.
I mean, when you say public frontage, legal frontage, when we rebuilt our house 16 years ago after a fire, we wanted to put a porch on the front. We had to go before the zoning board who said, you don't meet setback from the road.
Right.
Well, if it's not a legal road, a public way, then ZBA really didn't have the authority to say what you could and couldn't do in terms of setbacks.
Okay, so, I don't want, so what we're trying to do here is address the policies, as we were just said
Yeah.
a few minutes ago, so that a lot of, everybody in town, however they're situated relative to this issue, because the board has recognized this as a townwide, an interest of, a need for a townwide policy, because it impacts the entire town. So we're developing a policy that'll
So
get
as
everybody,
residents-
an ability to go ahead and answer from wherever they're situated.
Mhm.
And we're all in different spots, so that's what we're trying to do. It's quite a task to do.
So as a
but we're-
resident of a private way, we could, as a community, petition the town to
Well,
accept the.
this is the policy we're developing. This is what you see us working on, is
Right.
an answer to questions
But
like
I'm just
that.
saying, even before a policy is developed,
Oh,
I
sure
mean,
can.
Yeah.
policies
Oh, yeah.
can take years and years to develop.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
It's a
the,
bylaw that's.
yeah, with the bylaw, you
So we
presented to
could
town meeting
petition
and
the town
meeting votes
for
for it.
consideration of being accepted as a public way.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
and it's in the bylaws. You can,
Well, I was trying to read
Okay.
the bylaws, we couldn't get through the bylaws to find a section where it was.
they're on the bylaws are on the on the
Couldn't
town
find it, you
page.
tried, the average person can't find
Well,
it.
some of this is under Massachusetts general law, so
Yeah.
accepting
left.
as a roadway goes under Massachusetts general law as well.
There's, I can't quote the section and so on, but I will tell you that, the bylaws are hard to wade through. But there's a search feature on the online
Well, I
PDF.
did it, it took me to a statement by the state, but not by the
Yeah.
town.
Any residents along a private way may petition town meeting at any time.
It's one of our bylaws. And if you need a copy of the bylaws, they're available at the clerk's office
Yeah.
too. So you can stop in and get that there too. And I think we've probably heard, from a town point of view, I thought I've accessed that on a town website and not, so
Sure,
you
yeah.
can check that and just to see.
We are working to make it more
Yeah.
accessible
Yeah.
than the
All
PDF.
right.
Yeah, but I searched it, and it took me right to the state for it, and it was like, that doesn't.
All right. Now, what I'd like to do is propose that what we have here for tonight's final piece here, at least, is that we have a general policy here, are we in agreement that this is the overarching framework? And are these the sections that we wanna see in the policy? And I guess part of my question is there anything in these sections from 1 through 8 that do you wanna add something for
Yes.
Chris to go ahead and give us a policy on? Is there anything here you'd like to subtract? Cause I'd like to leave with Chris, and in an agreement amongst ourselves, we now have a framework of what that policy will look like. So, that said, I'll entertain any questions, any comments on what we may wanna add or subtract.
Yeah, I believe
Overarching.
that if we're recognizing that the framework is directionally an appropriate start, then I do believe we need to start to address a funding, at least the exploration of a funding mechanism at the
Okay.
same time.
So, do you wanna have in a section there, say 9, that says funding mechanism, and then have Chris start to flesh out some suggestions?
Yeah,
for us?
Chris has already made reference to it under implementation, section 8.
It would seem to me that that's important enough, it ought to be its own section.
Well, it might be, but the point is, Chris has made reference to it, but I think we ought to encourage that to go further.
I do. So I would suggest that you break that out, that's important enough, you break that out and make that a special section, because something that people are gonna wanna look at process, but they're also gonna look to see what funding they'll go right to it, so I'd like to suggest you break that out and have another section next time that says funding, and throw in what you think is the best proposals for us, okay?
I'm happy to. I think that's a potentially a very complex conversation. So, but I've started the conversation already, because if this was easily done, these ones would exist all over. So, and they don't.
That's right.
Doesn't mean we can't. So I'm going to I've started the conversation. Just to be
Yeah,
clear.
I would think that we may not have to get into all that detail in this policy. So that really what we have here is a funding section, so that someone who's reading the policy can see generally what the funding opportunities are. All that other elaborate work you're talking about, we may not need to take on, we wanna have an understanding of, we never need to write it into a policy, cause then, we may take 3 pages and expand it into too many, okay?
Okay.
So simpler is more or less this is a policy statement, not an implementation.
When you say, just be clear, just want, a funding mechanism is a potential pool of money and a method to use it, as opposed to a share the town would contribute, right? That's we're talking about a source of funds to implement.
I am describing this, so that it's clear to the board. I'm describing this as the general capital capability to support the activity. I believe that in the policy, the share of funding is part of the basis of what the board needs to determine. So, to your point, Chris, the actual mechanics of a funding mechanism could be relatively complex and may need to be separated from the policy. However, knowing that we can put together a funding mechanism then makes the policy itself a legitimate proposal, because you've got an objective, you've got a strategy, you've got a process, and you've got the ability to complete it financially.
Yeah, or may I say, what we'll do is, we're gonna have a policy that'll address the financial aspect of it.
Yes,
It'll be our
but-
policy to do that.
But the point of all
Yeah.
of this is that if any number of mechanisms are explored and for one reason or another cannot be adopted under our current structure, then we need to know that before
Sounds
we go
good.
forward.
And we'll have that as a section, okay, good, yes.
And 2 quick things. One would be thinking along of the betterment or means mechanisms to fund it. Along the lines of like the sewer, where you had a betterment for attaching to the sewer because it costs ungodly amounts to blast them attached to the sewer. Something along that parallel structure would be a reasonable way to look at it. And the other thing would be to have it available to all roads. I would recommend all roads A, B, and C. Granted,
You mean betterment access?
the betterment access to A, B, and C roads, the standards, substandard, non-standard roads. That's my only.
Is that?
Just on the jumping on the funding thing, we literally could have a statement in there that says each year, in the policy that says, each year the town manager and the board of selectmen will, set aside funds for general road repair throughout town, with a priority being public ways and
Yeah.
And to Kevin's, question, you know, again, I haven't read this, and I don't wanna say it's a great start, I think we got a skeleton, but the next time we talk about it, you know, I wanna have the ability to say, you know, one thing we didn't address is, so.
No, I think that's fine.
I wanna sign off on this structure.
No, yeah, I don't think, we're not gonna vote on this, and I think that's fine, I think we definitely agree with that. But at least we've agreed to this point here, the structure. One thing I wanna throw out is this idea of the public education as part of policy, I'm having a hard time
Yeah.
getting my arms around. So, part of our policy would be public education,
I think we have to talk
Yeah,
about that.
it's.
so we wanna keep that in as a section.
I believe it's part of the conversation, as you witnessed, as we all witnessed,
Yeah.
with the petition brought forward by the residents of Cedar Acres Lane. There is a dearth of understanding of what it means to live on a private way. And it's, you know, and the net result of that is that the only way you're going to fill in those blanks for residents who live along a public way is by way of education. That's critical, because the policy itself is not intended, I don't believe, to be an ever-funding vehicle, but rather to make the repairs necessary to get private ways up to a standard of passage that makes sense, and then encourage that the residents along those ways thereforward are able to maintain their own responsibilities in the future. I lived along 100 Pond Street. We paid a homeowners association fee of a fairly sizable amount on a regular monthly basis, and it went, part of it went for roadways. And I do remember that at one point, we had to make some sizable repairs, and go figure, the fund wasn't large enough, and our monthly went up. Yeah, so this is not unusual, it's not unexpected, and it's not unfair. However, that doesn't mean that homeowners actually understand it.
Yep.
Okay, so I think the education piece is absolutely critical.
Okay, good.
So my suggestion would be to actually run through all the roads in town and classify them and not allow it to happen organically. I mean, we had talked in the beginning about looking at all the roads and actually, flagging the condition of the roads. But let's take it farther. Let's identify through some process what each road is. So we could have on the website, we could have a policy. You go in, it clicks on the database, you go right to your road, and it tells you what your road is, and then it tells you what your options are.
And I agree with that, it makes absolute sense, as long as we have the definitions defined, the definitions are clear to us and therefore can be applied in advance,
Yes.
right?
Well, wouldn't that be a good test to see if our policy actually works? I mean, it's a way for us to do a reality
I think it makes
check.
sense, I mean, as a matter,
And we're gonna find
as a matter
issues.
of definition at the moment, I believe that Public Works actually maintains that file of private ways. And assuming that these definitions that these classifications that we've begun to identify here meet our approval for use and along with the input from the other sources, then they can be applied pretty quickly, I would imagine.
And we do have a spreadsheet, which
Yeah.
we're working on.
Yeah, I've seen
So,
this.
and that, your
That needs to
visual,
be updated, but yeah.
But you do
visual-
classify 3A, 3B, 3C,
Oh, yeah,
and then talk about the resources that are available for each.
Yes,
So,
based
but
on
you-
what the parameters are.
Right.
but you're not talking about doing it after we have the policy though? Or do you want, no, I'm talking about, how would you build, what we're talking about into this? This is section 10?
I'm just, you were talking about education, right? So this is that, rather
Might be
than
part of
do
the-
elaborate education or tell the realtors they have to do something, I'm suggesting this might be a more efficient way of
Gotcha.
doing citizen
So
education
we can
on this.
discuss the refinement of that when we
Yeah.
do education, which, yeah.
And and a realtor can say, well, go take a look at the website and find out what your road is. And actually, people will learn over time what their
Yeah.
classification is, right?
We could do,
Yeah, makes
we could
good
do,
sense.
yeah, it's part of the education, we could, once we could roll that out as a forum type thing, we could have a forum and have a demonstration and
Yep.
so forth, so that, okay, anything else on the board? You chairman of the
Yeah,
board?
just,
Would you
Clark
just stand up
Brewer.
and identify yourself, please?
Clark Brewer, chairman of the planning board. I like Jack's idea of trying to fit the roadways in that exist into those buckets. There's gonna be outliers and ones that don't fit. And DPW has a list of roads, but the town clerk maintains it with the help of the planning board. They have their own list of ways, and even that is imperfect. It's as good as everybody who looks at it can get. But I think trying to classify all the roadways is a great idea. It's a great first start. It's a project though.
I think we have the vast majority of them. I think what gets a little fuzzy are these kind of driveway type things, right? They're not all defined.
But that's where we're gonna run into trouble, right?
The other way, anything that looks and talks like a road is already identified somehow.
Okay, and this is what I'd like to do now, this has been a great discussion, and we've moved forward considerably on this. So I see before me a policy that's much further refined. There's general outlines here of a policy I see here that we have, and that Chris has gotten a lot of input, that we now have him go back, take all this input, and come back and present us another revised policy, which we will review at our next meeting. Does that time frame work okay, or why do you want?
Yeah, I also, I mean, I can't, the input that I've just gotten is kind of on the margins, right? I think you're all gonna digest it and come back in 2 weeks and say, okay, I've thought about it, like Diane slept on it, and here are a bunch of things I wanna change. So if you wanna get that to me in advance, you're welcome to, but just to me. And I can try to incorporate some of it in advance of the meeting. Or we could just set aside a chunk of time at the next meeting to do something.
Well, let's discuss that, because there's a big difference in that, folks. Do we wanna see another version of this? Well, two ways we could do this, then, is that we could, within the next week, give any input that we have to Chris, and he could take that and everything else and come up with another version of the policy, okay? That we could do, or we could just, everybody think about it, and we can come back and essentially, start where we are now and have a further discussion. Which way do you wanna go? It seemed to me it might be good to keep doing iterations where we develop a policy. I think we'll get to a policy quicker that way.
My preference would be just to go back and read this and do the edits and send it to Chris and let him take a look at it.
And then he can come back with another, full
Right.
policy, take a full shot at it, and we'll keep doing this until we've, that's the process we'll use.
This is
So-
easier to turn around now because we have a.
Yeah,
Well, we
that's
got
what
something
it'll,
started.
it'll actually get easier and easier. There'll probably be more this time. Each time we'll do this until we feel as though we have a policy that we can take. So what I like to suggest is that everybody have any input to Chris, within a week, the end of day, next Tuesday?
That'd be great,
Yeah,
if
so-
that's possible.
Alright, so we have a week, give him any input that you have, and then he'll come back, there'll be another policy, and that policy I wanna have in the, package, okay?
Yep.
And that's why I have timeframes on this, and, everybody will have a couple of days to look at it, okay? Great progress on this. Good discussion, thank you. Alright,
I know. I was hoping nobody noticed.
we have the, next discussion is the Seaport Economic Council grant application. So, Jack, do you wanna lead the discussion on this, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Everybody
It's in
got a
the package
copy of the draft application last week. Anybody need a copy?
Well, I think it was not in our packet, but it was emailed to us, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Would anybody like, I got a hard copy.
Did you get a copy?
Right, I got one, so I'll take my notes.
Steve, you want a copy?
If you got one, yeah. I was looking for it.
Kevin?
I think I have one.
Chris?
Thank you.
So, as we've talked about before, there's a rolling application process for the Seaport Council's funding. Our neighbors have taken advantage of this program for the last 3 or 4 years. Some of our neighbors have, financed more than $3 million off of this specific program. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've talked to the woman who runs this program. She gave me a lot of advice on how to do this application. She actually gave me 2 applications that were submitted and approved the last cycle. So I used those two applications basically to model our application. In addition to that, a group of us visited Harwich. We actually had a consulting firm come to town. Those folks have done a significant number of master plans, and we had them walk the harbor with majority of the stakeholders, including Clark. Lori was involved, I think Diane was there, and we had some fishing, the fishermen were there. We didn't have any private property owners, but we had a good contingency of folks to take a look at the harbor. Based on that tour, we got a rough estimate of what the consultant thought it would cost for us to do a harbor plan, and that's what we're applying for. We're applying for monies from the Seaport Council to do what is called a municipal harbor plan, and that's a legal definition of what this plan is. It's defined by the state, and it's defined by coastal zone management. So it's a whole process and what you have to do the plan, and what the scope of the plan has to be. So if you look at this, you'll see places, I got a little bit of feedback, and most of the feedback was, Jack, you didn't fill out all the sections, and we're not supposed to, because this is a universal application for not only money for doing master plans, but also money for actually, building piers and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So the thing we applied for, or are applying for, is the Local Maritime Economic Development Planning Grant. And we're asking for $100,000, and they'll match 80%, we match 20%. The deadline is November 1st, so I'd like to get this in by the end of this week. So I think the way to continue with this is if there are comments or changes, they have to get back to us by Thursday, with the idea that we can make all the edits and changes and submit the application on Friday.
I've been grinding through this too, so I'm about 2/3 of the way through.
Okay.
So I have a chunk of stuff that I'll send you. Just some of it is just some updates and clarifications to things that are in here.
Yep.
And some of it's just style, which
Yeah.
is just me, but so that's not as big.
Yeah, no problem at all.
But
I mean,
I actually sat down with Lori. She has just some knowledge she has of the harbor that I simply don't have.
Yeah.
And so I was able to tweak some. For example, we actually have I didn't realize this. There's actually over 500. There's access for over 500 boats in the harbor. There's actually over 300 slips and 200 moorings.
Right.
Which is, I think.
So part of the problem with putting this application together is actually finding all the information.
Exactly.
Right. Again, this is something the selectmen really have to think hard about, is our whole filing system for keeping track of stuff. In a random conversation, getting a cup of coffee downtown, I found out that the federal government has done a complete survey of the harbor, and it's really substantial, and it was very expensive, and nobody knows where it is, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Chris or the current administration. It's over the years, we've never had a process for filing this stuff and keeping track of it, and it gets lost. So I know. It's one of those, it's one more of those things we have to do as selectmen, I think, is get this filing system up and running.
When, in the process of going through the tour, talking to different constituent bases and so on, because I wasn't part of this.
Yep.
From a commercial standpoint, what do we lack? What did you get for feedback?
Fuel.
Well, there are two really big issues for the harbor. The first issue is the facilities that are available to the fishermen in order for the fishermen to load and unload and do their job. I didn't know this until we started talking to the fishermen, but a substantial portion of their time during the week is spent loading and unloading and doing maintenance. And the way our facilities are set up, it makes it extremely difficult and time consuming, and it's a lot of labor. And they say, they're at least a day, maybe a day and a half off the water because of it. One of the other pieces of this is the local wholesalers will not come to town and buy the fish off the boat. So the way it usually works is you go out, you do your lobstering, you come back, you bring the lobsters back, they're in the tubs. Places like Marshfield and Plymouth and Hull, the wholesalers will be waiting there for these guys, and they'll actually bid on the loads as they come in. And one of the fishermen said to me that the difference in pricing between having competitive bidding for my load and not is sometimes up to 50 cents a pound. And he said, over the course of a whole summer, it's my profitability. It's, you know, it's a tremendous number. And he said, you know, it makes it really hard for somebody young, starting out with a loan on a boat, to make a living working out of Cohasset Harbor. And he said, eventually you won't get the young people coming in behind the old timers to work the boats.
Well, this is where I was going with it, because the commercial fleet is critical to maintaining federal funding for
Absolutely.
dredging, right? That's, commercial fleet's not here, we don't get much attention, even though we are a federally designated harbor of refuge,
Which is an important designation.
which is an extraordinarily important designation and a head scratcher as to, you know, as to why we haven't leveraged that. The second question I have has nothing to do with commercial stuff, but rather it's item down here called community compact. And can anyone describe to me what that is, because I
Yes.
don't understand.
This is the Baker administration's grant and best practices program. So we can actually check the box to yes.
Oh,
on
we
that,
can, good.
Because we're actually working with Hingham and Whitman on we haven't signed for it, but we're working on this is the stuff I'm gonna send you.
Yeah,
I
good,
wrote,
okay.
The community compacts are designed to encourage best practices.
Mm-hmm.
And the Baker administration has actually raised the stakes and said, if you're in, you get bonus points, which means if you're not, you don't. And a number of communities have done them. Now, we're actually ahead of the game in a lot of areas, like financial planning and stuff like that, so, and there's only certain categories. I think the area we're gonna generate the most is in IT, so Ron's been working with a consortium, and one that we wanna do is IT security, a regional IT security community compact. Another one that Ron identified for me is digitization. So, I think we'll most certainly, I'll be presenting that to all of you in the not too distant future, to do a community compact with the state as a best practice, document digitization and record keeping.
That's great.
And there is some money available, not a lot, but I'll take anything, so.
Yeah.
But that's what that is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Emails?
So, and I just want to say one or two more things. So this is just an application for a grant to do the plan. Once, if we're lucky enough to get the grant to do the plan, we're gonna have to create a structure to do this. And what they expect is that you create a committee, like Situate's done a harbor committee. And it has to include a member of the planning board. They encourage representation from all the stakeholders that are involved in the harbor. So that means, you know, you gotta have the town manager, you have to have the harbor master. They encourage private owners, which is, you know, could be controversial. And they also want, you know, people like the Sailing Center, the Yacht Club, and some of these, you know, the coastal, the student organizations.
Yes, yeah.
So, you know, they wanna encourage access, they wanna maintain the commercial fleet, they wanna maintain the character of the town, and they also want to increase the safety, increase accessibility in
Do
town.
we have that, you feel, in this application, is that,
Yes,
because you're
yes.
on the committee, you're talking about using the existing harbor committee in this?
Yeah, I
But is that just a
think
suggestion,
I'd
or
actually
would-
expand it, cause it's only 5 people.
And use that as the mechanism?
I would use I mean,
Right.
that's the easiest way to do it, I'm not sure if that's the right way, I'm open, I mean, it's really up to you guys how you wanna do it.
But if those are the things that they're really looking for, you feel as though you've got those selling points in there?
Yeah,
They're gonna look at it and say,
yep.
they're doing this stuff?
Yeah, it's, you know, I actually talked to the woman and said, okay, how am I doing? And she said, fine. And, you know, one of the local harbor masters is on the review committee, and I got a review from him.
So, on a broad strokes, this is about putting this application in and hopefully getting it approved and then getting up to $100,000 you're suggesting to do the study. So this step here gets us the money, the fund,
Right.
right? And then probably simultaneous, if this looks optimistic to us, while this is in its process, which will take a few months, I imagine, we'll be forming the committee. Am I
And I would suggest we do a charter just like we're doing for the master
okay?
plan.
So we would use the methodology to do a charter,
Right,
agree on that, and then appoint the members. That'd be good. Okay, then with that done, and then hopefully if we got the funding, then that would then go over under the aegis of this committee to go ahead and hire a consultant or whatever, and do our harbors, a study of our harbor, similar to what we saw in Harwichport, is this correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So then with that all done there, you're visualizing that, based on what I'm reading here, is that that then will be an end product, which at some point that would fit in, would go over to the master plan,
Well, I wouldn't do
Will
it
you
separate
share
from the
it with
master
them,
plan. I
or-
would be sharing with the master plan the whole time
all
we're
the
doing
way,
it.
all the way along?
And the only reason you're separating it out is because you're using, it's coastal zone management, it's DEP, it's a lot of other regulatory bodies that are a little
Right.
bit separate from what the master plan's
But
up to.
the
But it's an
master plan
integral
will take
part.
elements of it probably,
And
you're
it'll be a little more
visualizing-
technical
And you
than,
feel as though working as we go along with them, that incorporation will go okay.
especially with, the issues of integrating downtown with the harbor. I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of design issues that we're gonna be talking about.
Right.
I think it's critical that there's a dialogue going on all
Yeah.
the time.
So then essentially what we would have then its end product is, a harbor view master plan that fits in with the master plan of the town, and this is a big chunk of things we give it some focused energy to.
Yes.
Is that, if I got that
Yeah, and
overview, and I wanted to get it for the public to see what's going on.
yes, that's
too.
true. And the municipal harbor plan allows us to, it's, again, it's a legal term, it's a legal process. But once we do that, we then have access to other monies that we can use to improve infrastructure, help the fleet, do the things we need to do in the
So
harbor.
this is similar to the Alternative Energy Committee, once they made the application, got us certified as a town, and
Yes,
then created as green communities, some other opportunities. This gets us into a bigger ballgame. I think I
yes,
remember when we were at Harwichport, I do remember that the harbor master said that once they got this going, they've been applying for other things on a regular basis. And he also indicated that funding's fairly readily available if you,
yeah,
is that correct?
that is correct. And
Is that the road we may be going down with this?
that is the, for example, the pier. The pier needs to be upgraded. I mean, it's unsafe, it doesn't work, but I think everybody would agree to that.
This is the pier on Government Island.
Yes, the pier on Government Island, the big stone pier on Government Island.
Right.
There's also the one off of Parker Street that's in pretty bad shape.
Yeah,
That's
this-
another huge
This,
need.
this particular one, though, is what is directly applicable to the commercial
Commercial,
fleet.
yeah.
Yes.
They're
So-
dragging their fish.
So what the harbor master plan will do, will actually, there's a process here that's really important. There are gonna be a lot of stakeholders with a lot of different needs. The planning process is really designed to help people collaborate and come up with a final plan. And the municipal harbor plan encourages people to block off areas according to function, right? So we'd block off an area and we'd say, this is for commercial fishermen, here's how we anticipate developing it over time. Phase one would be secure the current pier, phase two would be wrap it with a new pier and give winches and access, whatever it is, you actually define how you're gonna develop different parts of the harbor.
You're basically applying zoning concepts to the harbor.
Well, I don't know if I
Planning
call it
concepts
zoning, but
anyways.
you're designing different parts. Like Situate did it for their
Okay.
pier, right? They did a municipal harbor plan, and then they went out and got funds to do the pier. And
I mean, what
It
they've
came from
done,
the same pot of money.
we went down to Harwichport, and they've done this over the last 15 years. It's pretty impressive what they've done. I mean, he was able to stand there and say, now, this is our commercial area, this is our sightseeing boat type area, this is what we're doing for fishermen, and it was really, he had a real synergy of things going on, and once they were there, they had future plans, so.
And they have on-water plans and off-water plans, not, within reason, right? It's not 2 miles back into downtown. It's like, what do we do? So they're building a new harbor master building, which we would obviously think that that's something we'd consider too. They design it, they put bathrooms in, showers, but they also design the parking lot so people can load and unload and park their cars. The other issue we have is we have no parking and we have limited access to slips right now. And, those are two other issues that we're gonna have to sort out with this municipal plan. And the answer may be, we can't do much parking. I don't think that is the answer, I think there are ways around it. And the answer may be, we can only do 250 slips in the harbor, but I don't think that's the answer either. But I think if we're not planning
That's why you do a
this,
study. The study will help
Right.
give us these answers.
and if we're not doing it with a process so everybody has input, we're never gonna get it done.
Good. All right, anything else from the board on this? Could I make a suggestion, if it's okay with the board, that Chris and Jack get together? You need to finish this off next
do.
week. just finish off the form, get it in,
Okay,
and proceed, and let's hope we can get the money, because if we get the money, it'll be a big contribution.
yeah. And it's competitive, right? So, and I'm doing everything I can,
Keep at it.
right, I'm talking to these people all the time.
Diane.
Just one question on if we are lucky and get it. It's, we're applying for $100,000, it's an 80-20 match.
Right.
Would we be able to find that 20 immediately through some of the money set aside for master planning, or would we have to go to town meeting in May?
I think we could potentially tap the reserve fund, potentially.
If we needed to kick off right away. or
Exactly, and then we
something, right.
plunge it at town meeting, or if there's money left in an applicable, budget or something.
Well, under this structure, this would be a capital expenditure, or could be defined as a
It could
capital
be,
expenditure,
yeah.
such that were the advisory committee to go along with it and essentially extend funding for current purposes, we could replenish that at a current funding, because the annual town meeting takes place in April. So you could do a current withdrawal with town meeting vote to immediately replenish the reserve fund.
And we,
Okay.
And the truth, practically speaking, you wouldn't need the money right away
Right away.
anyway. I mean, you have to have the commitment for it at least, and I have to see what the grant requires. It's more than likely a reimbursement grant, so you front the money, they reimburse you.
I think that's the way it works.
But we, you pay as the process goes on, and this goes well into fiscal year 18.
Yep.
So I think practically speaking, we probably wouldn't have that much of a demand for the cash anyway in the short term.
You know, we're looking at 12 months to do the actual work, and there's probably 5 months worth of setup on one side, on the beginning, before you can get started.
and the timeline is that grant decisions are made in January? Is that what-
Application goes in November, decisions are made in January, and I think you get notice in February.
Great, okay.
And then there's a whole process. Susan actually runs this for us. Susan Bruce.
Okay, all right.
There's a whole process.
Yeah. Any other questions? I suggest we have Chris and Jack proceed with this. Thank you for taking the initiative on this,
Thank you.
Jack.
Let's
and
just
Chris.
catch
Get it
up
out the
now.
door.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Our next topic of conversation, our next topic is the master plan committee charge. Would you come up and identify yourself, Clark, and
Clark Brewer, Chairman of the Planning Board. Dave Trinan.
okay, so what I'd like to do is sort of frame what we're doing here is, under the Massachusetts general law that Clark has sent to us, and we've discussed this before, it's part of the planning, the planning board's responsibility to periodically do a master plan or update a previous one, or do such activities as we're talking about tonight, which is to go over and develop, and revise a master plan for the future. So, this is really something that, according to it is a planning board function, it's really a responsibility for them to go ahead and, take the lead on. We've discussed that before here. I mean, I just wanna preface that because this is a little different than when other committees and would come before us. So the planning board's come forward with us, and they have gone over and apparently voted on and agreed upon a charge as to how they wish to proceed.
Sure.
So they're gonna go ahead and go over that with us. I think an objective tonight that might be good is if we, look at and come to an agreement that this charge is what we all agree upon, and make any changes, whatever it is, I guess, that we can agree upon. And with that done, it would then call within that charge for appointments to the committee that you're gonna form to do the master plan function, and we would proceed from that and move on. Is that, I just wanted to frame what we're doing.
Everything you said makes sense, it's true, that's exactly where we're at. And, with the planning for the plan, the phase one that we did with the MAPC, we got a lot of good information, a lot of really kind of positive participation at the visioning session and as a part of the survey. And I just wanted to mention I made 2 paper copies. I know paper's a little old-fashioned, but we have the report from MAPC and 350-page appendix, which is basically the information that the new committee that we're gonna be forming, the master plan committee, that's information that they can hit the ground running. There's examples of RFPs for master planning services within that report. And leave them for,
We don't need, you
Chris,
can leave them, but we don't need
you
to
leave
be
them for
passing it
Chris,
around right now. You
in
can leave it with
the
Tracy if we
office.
wanna not lose it.
Clark, is most of that information the stuff that they handed out at the program on Saturday?
It's, most of it was included in that, but, there is some additional information that was, put in the appendix. So it's kind of a complete package, a complete picture for the master plan committee and the planning board, the board of selectmen to move to the next step, which is a full master plan.
And the document you sent Kevin up today, was that this?
That's that, I
Okay.
believe, yeah.
Yep.
I forwarded it as soon as I got it
Great,
to you folks.
thank you.
You're welcome, you asked us to, you asked me to.
So we had, the planning board went back and forth on the charge. We tried to create as simple, a committee structure as possible with some robustness, where the planning board, if there was a need to create, sort of additional requirements as we move forward through time, there's a mechanism to do that. The only comments I've heard were from Chris today that the long-range planning appointment that we've suggested doesn't work because that's a committee of appointees.
Yeah,
And that particular assignment doesn't work. Was there another one?
advisory.
Advisory as well. Okay. So we
And
would
the reason
have,
for that, just so people, advisory by bylaw can't serve on any other committees in town, it's just for the public to know, that's the
Okay.
reason for that.
that makes sense. Then we had a total of 13, and I'm just gonna jump around to the kind of significant points. We had a total of 13, that would bring us down to 11 members for this committee. If it makes sense, instead of those two committees, maybe the selectmen could find citizens at large who have salient or particular expertise related to master plan.
Seems to me, I mean, Jack was just mentioning that one of the things the state and people look for, like on the harbor thing, is they definitely want broad citizen participation in these
Yeah.
things. But what we could do is put out a 2-week notice and have the applications come in to be on the master planning committee, once we've established the charge, and that would, we could do two appointments like that.
I think that would be great. And then the committee assignments, essentially each committee would make those appointments on an annual basis. The committee itself, like the planning board, would appoint 2 of its members on an annual basis.
This is like the alternative energy operates this way, is that worked out?
That's right. That seems like, for the long-range planning, that was a good way to go, rather than having, it's kinda hard to keep track of 3-year appointments and then,
I agree.
everybody's forgotten, was I a 2-year or a 3-year? It's a
Right,
whole
right.
kind of management thing. So that each committee sends up 1 member, or in this case, 2 members.
Actually, another healthy aspect of it too is it'll have each committee each year contemplate what's going on with the master plan program as they send a member up, so,
Right, not forget about it for any more than a year.
exactly.
Dave, did you wanna bring up anything specific?
Well, one of the things we talked about was we wanted to make the process as inclusive as possible, because you want a wide variety of input. But at the same time, we didn't want the committee to be so large as to become unwieldy. We wanted them to be able to efficiently meet with a relatively, limited number of people, that they can move the process along, with the opportunity to invite lots of others to come in, make a special presentation about a particular priority or a need or a particular department in town, so that, I think there's always some sensibility about, well, why, isn't this department represented in the committee? And we had to make some decisions around that, but we wanted the process to be inclusive and an opportunity for those other parties to feel that they could be regularly involved. All of these will be public meetings. We'd like to have a mechanism where they can be, publicly reported out in terms of minutes. The public would be invited to them, so that I think there'll be an opportunity for lots of input from.
Well, you could have them broadcast too, if you
Yeah.
have them,
Or at least recorded if we can't get it live.
I mean, recorded and,
We have had videography for just about all the master plan only discussions, as well as presentations. And those, I think with the new town website, those are gonna be postable. With the new town website, right now, we have to email links to see those.
So with the new
Those
website, they'll be able to
previous
put up videos themselves. It's good.
committee?
In addition, we thought that the committee itself, as a working kind of, working through time and trying to figure things out, could also have the ability to get two appointees. And I don't know if you've thought about that, that mechanism for a one-year term. That the committee could make appointees,
What committee? I'm sorry.
that the master plan committee
Oh, okay.
could make their own appointees and
That I
just
don't,
have two.
I didn't remember us reading that he was in.
Yep, as may become necessary, additional appointees, none represented on the CMC for more than a year.
Okay,
So,
let's discuss that.
Yep,
so the total head count on the committee is 13, is that what it
Right.
is? Yeah,
that seems like a good number for
yeah, it's,
a working group.
11 is optimal. From, all the literature,
Unlucky.
11, after 11 it starts to get, it takes on other,
Yeah, group mob behavior.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, if 13
Good
people are
mob
working
behavior.
well together, 13 works okay, and you may need it because you got a lot of work to do.
Right.
Okay, I think the issue here is that the committee themselves would be able to add actually an indefinite number of appointees at their own discretion without talking to planning or the board of selectmen or anybody, and that's the issue we're getting at, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should think about that.
Yeah, wait, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Diane?
two comments, one on that, which I'll make second, but one thing we might wanna consider is putting somebody from what's gonna be the Harbor Master Plan Committee. Cause, technically, the harbor and this are gonna be running parallel, so it's just a thought.
Yeah.
I asked this at another meeting, like a couple years ago, and I think I remember correctly that the Board of Selectmen has appointing authority. I don't know that we can have another committee that we appoint. I don't know that we can give them appointing
Right.
authority.
And I don't know, as we
Just
should,
by law.
I don't know, if it's good policy either.
Right. I think certainly if there was a need for more or another
They
representation,
come, they
you'd
would
come
talk
to us
about it, and we
and
make them.
I can't
If that's the
imagine,
case, I would yield to the requirements.
whatever the requirement is,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I don't think that's really a huge
Stick.
concern. If there was an apparent need for more, we
To come
bring the
and just-
case, yeah.
Absolutely.
So could you change that policy to say that though, to
Sure.
make that clear?
Yeah, we'll clean
That,
up the
that
language.
any new
after the
appointments can be
changes we
made,
talked
and
about,
that
yeah.
that you'll run them by the board of selectmen, okay?
We're having a special meeting next week devoted just to the discussion of the master plan, because we felt that we wanted to dig into a little bit more of the reporting that was done at the visioning session. Some people had thought it was kind of confusing in terms of how did they come up with those priorities and where's the data to support that. Would have been helpful if they had maybe bulleted, 86 people said number one on our list and so forth, but that information is in the appendix, so we're gonna kind of dig into it a little deeper and have maybe more clarity about what shook out in terms of priorities.
See what Harvard did with the Devon's question? They actually did a bar chart that let you know how it was answered.
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
What we have is the raw data on the survey is 1,200 pages that we made one copy of, and it's in the planning board office. There's a lot of good information in there,
Right.
especially question 46, which was what do you
Or
any
open.
comments? Let's hear what you got to say.
Right.
And people, I think across the board, were overwhelmingly positive.
Right.
And even if they had negative comments, they were constructive criticism, I thought.
Except the one that listed the Board of Selectmen as one of the top 3 problems of the
Yeah.
town.
Well-
That did crack me up.
You
That was
found my
Chris.
And then they
comments?
say,
That was Chris.
but then this, in the same
Chris did
sentence,
the
it
form.
just cracked me up, top 3 problems, Board of Selectmen.
Fair enough.
Mr. John Smith.
And nobody's identified in these, but, I was really surprised at the depth of thought that went into the general comments and the commitment that people have to trying to make their town as good a place as possible, or stay as good as possible.
Could we add a member, I think that on the harbor committee is a good point.
Yep.
Could we just go ahead and put that in, because we have a harbor committee anyways, and
Yep.
that group should be represented, and assume
Yeah,
it'll become a
because I
full-blown
think,
thing,
yeah,
but
it's
either,
such a
well
big
as-
component of the overall
Yeah, the whole
town plan,
thing,
and there's
yeah,
a
just add,
parallel process going on.
well, we add them as a member, yeah. So
As
that'll
well as
be-
we're taking out long-range planning and advisory from our,
Yeah,
from
and
our
you'll add
list.
harbor committee.
Yep.
And we'll do two at large. That may give you an even number, is that okay?
14,
Yeah,
yeah.
you want an odd number.
Yeah. So one at large, I don't know,
Okay, that's fine.
It's either one or three at large.
right, then you really
Cause
good.
it-
Maybe,
How about-
we could go with a smaller one, we could always add to this committee, but, you know, if we start out with a core group, of maybe the 11 is the.
I'm just
is
trying to
the way
think,
go.
just in case, if we, cause we would go public notice on this, cause we've had some recent experiences, is when our town has become blessed with people wanting to volunteer on committees, which is really super. We may put out for one and get 9 applications, you know, so I'm just, how do we wanna think about that, or
And people fall
is
off.
3 too many?
People fall off, you
They
know?
do.
You
Yeah,
don't get
I mean,
people
How about if we
participating.
do
The
up
first-
to 3 from the selectmen, or what do you,
We could always modify the charter, but people do fall off. I mean, in the first master plan committee, I mean, I think after the first meeting, 2 or 3 people said, this isn't what I'm interested in.
Right,
that's why maybe we should do 3
But then-
citizens at large?
But then, you know, if they drop off, then you just reappoint.
Yeah. Okay, well, what do you wanna do, folks? 1 or 3?
one.
One.
1.
Okay?
So
'Cause
when
we're
we do
getting-
this, we'll put out, we'll put 1 citizen at large.
Yeah, I mean, remember too, that there's a lot of, I mean, everybody
citizens.
here are
citizens,
citizens
yeah.
at large, and,
Right.
and with respect to the affordable housing, it's absolutely imperative that they sit at the table, but
Yeah.
they're brand new, and most of them are new to town
Right.
government, so they're gonna function, I think, initially as a citizen at large, so I think we're all right.
So that gives you 13 members? Is my math
Yes.
correct?
It's a big group.
Yep.
It's really almost unwieldy. You know, that's a big number.
That's 13.
Is that 13?
Yep.
I don't think you wanna get bigger than 13.
Yeah, it's 13, right?
Oh,
Does
good,
it-
good, good.
Say they want no
Taking
more.
out 2, adding harbor and adding citizen at large, yeah.
It gives 13. Okay, and then this group would form and appoint its own chair each year.
That's right,
And now, do you see this,
vice chair.
you see this group as really pretty much running the master plan project? And they're gonna develop it, you know,
Working
create
with
the
it.
whole 300-page document and,
Working with a consultant, you know, going through the RFP, but toggling back and forth with the, meeting regularly with the planning board.
yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I personally wouldn't wanna constrain this master plan committee initially, other than say we're gonna, you know, wanna get regular updates and,
Which is, you know, which
make
obviously
sure-
you should, since by law you're supposed to be, this is your baby anyways, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, as far as consultants, so forth, you'd have the master planning committee, do that, and even decide what they need in that area and so forth.
You know, they have examples of the RFPs, you know, I really think that they're ready to hit the ground running, and, once they digest all the documentation, and there's a lot of it, to put out an RFP.
And, but they'd have a discussion amongst themselves as to whether and how to proceed with all that,
Right.
right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, good.
But, and Chris should,
Oh, yeah,
Chris should get to review it.
What, the RFP?
Oh,
Yeah,
sure,
but
yeah.
he has
In terms
to,
of
by law,
procurement,
yeah.
absolutely.
By law,
We have
yes,
to
yeah.
work with Chris, and, you know, remember, there's gonna be 2 of you and 2 of us on the committee too, so
Fine.
it's not like they're,
We're gonna be
Just-
lost in space.
yeah. What? How did you get out?
Well, who are you?
How did this happen? I don't know, ask Chris.
Okay, are we in agreement on the charge then, folks?
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
Okay, looks good. And we'll go with this as it is. Do we wanna do any edits or anything, any helpful?
I have
Wait.
some minor
Yeah, she's
grammatical
good on
tweaks,
this.
can I
Yes.
just send them to you?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like, get rid of the et cetera at the end, I'm sure you've got that.
Just little tiny things.
And then, can we get the committee and panels right away?
What we'd like to do is, if we're now, do we need to vote on this, folks?
We do, cause we
Okay.
can.
What I'd like to do then, if it's okay, unless you go ahead and you
What is the
speak.
time frame?
Well, what I'd like to do then is that we will vote on this charge tonight, and so then it's approved. We now have a charge. Then we will go ahead and tonight we'll set the date in which we will put out, we have only one member to appoint, right, publicly, so we will have to put out a process to appoint that. And we could also put out what an advisement needs to go to each one of these committees from, I guess, you, or send an email with the charge and ask them to appoint their member on this, do you wanna give them a date?
Yeah, we'd like them to get us something, if they can get us to us by the 4th, which is basically 2 weeks from, 10 days from now, you can appoint them all on the 7th, which is your next meeting. Otherwise, you can appoint them on the 22nd. But you still have to appoint, I mean, even these other people are recommended by a board, you still have to appoint them.
Okay, so do we wanna do that at the next meeting, folks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing is, a lot of these committees aren't meeting until after our next meeting.
Right, so whoever can get us, and by the way, you might be able to get the citizen at large for the next one. Well, I think Amanda will make sure that, I'm sure there'll be town seeks citizen at large for planning committee, that'll be the lead story.
So is that the note, don't you have to put out a notice though that's formal somehow? or-
We could put out, we could draft something and put it up.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and put out for the citizen at large, make sure they see this charge, and we'll put on the agenda to appoint that citizen at large next meeting, okay? And we'll also appoint as many members as come forward from the other committees.
Yeah.
And then if some are not, they'll be reminded to we beef up the committee.
You can even appoint the 2 members from the selectmen.
Well, that was what I was gonna suggest next, is that on our next meeting, we'll appoint those 2 members,
And you can recommend your 2, because you're meeting, right?
right? So at our next meeting, we'll appoint our 2 members, so, basic rules, lawn signs 4 days before the meeting, no robocalls. So anyways, we'll appoint our 2 members.
No, we'll take the initial lead on getting the committee together. Going forward, I think we should talk about whether or not Joanne or someone else can provide support. This committee is gonna need a staff liaison, even if it's just for administrative purposes, to make sure that agendas get posted and minutes get placed and a lot of that kind of stuff.
So who's gonna work on that?
We'll have to talk about.
There was some discussion about trying to get a part-time municipal planner.
Well, I don't know that, yes, of service, but I don't think it's gonna be available for this per se. This is, we'll talk, let's talk.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Because this does need the staff support, it's gonna need some.
Right.
Okay, do you have anything else then on this? Does this give you everything? Now, earlier, we looked at the warrant article relative to the monies that you wanted for the consultant on this, that was at 95,000.
Right.
So that's gotta be approved by town meeting, but I believe both ourselves and advisory now have voted on that. And I think we voted unanimously to approve it, so.
Great,
But
thank you.
next, we'll then need to go to the town.
All right.
Okay, you're welcome. Can we do anything else for you?
That's it, thank you very much.
You come anytime this process is going on.
Yeah.
You are on an agenda anytime you want to be.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, that was the, next we have a selectman update, start with Jack.
I'm good. I've been working on the harbor plan. That's been my.
We've already done your update.
Yep.
Dan?
I'm good.
I'm good. Sounds like a poker game.
Lions
Colin
Pub.
Ration.
If you
Colin
could-
Ration. The football team is in playoffs, the high school football team. They're going to Nantucket to, I believe, to play the Whalers. And it's gonna be Friday.
The Sailors against the Whalers?
The
Skippers.
Skippers.
Skippers against the Whalers?
So it'll be,
That's a connection to your community.
it'll be Friday, and I believe it's a 5 o'clock game. And if you wanna go, you can go by plane or by ferry.
Are you chartering a plane for
The
the?
Teslas drive right
I'm
over
not,
water.
but That's right.
You gotta be
Water-
careful though, that they don't short out.
That's right.
Jesus,
the
the
Schubert-
vehicles.
Is there a
Schubert
fan,
rocket ship.
is there a fan bus or fan leaving at what time?
I believe the fan was leaving at 12:30.
It's a fan duck boat.
Because I think it's a 2-hour ferry, so, the ferry leaves at 2:30. So if you wanna go, make sure you get the tickets early and find out that you get there on time. Let's wish them luck.
That might be the only event on the island that night.
Good luck to them.
Success, victory
Yes.
and no injury.
Yes.
And the other thing which I've been slow to give you guys is the state numbers for revenue. This year, they're actually up quite nicely. Last month, September was a very big year, very big month for the state. The total revenue for the state is up 3.9% as of September, which it was a very big month for the state. Revenue, which includes income tax, was up 14.9%. Motor vehicle tax, which you'll see in the motor vehicle excise tax here, was up almost 8%. Sales tax was up 6.4%, so the economy is pushing ahead, yes.
And is that up over the first quarter last fiscal year?
It is up over year to year.
Or are you talking,
year
are
to
you
year.
doing month to month? Okay.
Month to month, it's up 7.4%, and year to
okay.
year, it's up 3.9%. So it was a very good month.
The unemployment
Sales,
rate you had
unemployment
there is 3%.
is 3%.
3%, which
So-
is one of the best
Yeah.
in the United States.
So it's a good sign that the state is doing quite well. For the mid-month, October, it's up 16.2% for all taxes, so that includes income, which is up 21 in the, you see, the motor vehicle is flat. Doesn't go into meals and hotel taxes, I didn't mention that.
Diane?
Yeah. Have we started tracking or taking in
Yes.
meals and hotel tax?
You wanna, we can talk about that now?
It's a segue for you.
He's gonna do that in his next
It's a
presentation.
segue.
Oh, yeah, you got fiscal update
Yeah.
going on,
That's a
okay.
segue for him.
Because I don't wanna jump over Steve.
Steve?
Yeah, you're gonna love me on this. I got a call again from a resident who had written an email to both the board and to the town manager with concern over removal of parking spaces on Elm Street. And I remember asking at the time, and I'll just ask for it again, whose authority is parking?
Parking is under the selectmen.
Right. That's where I was going with this.
But we can't, even this board can't make things happen that are not needed.
The town actually installed the parking spaces, but here's the question, right? If the authority belongs to the selectmen and the spaces were removed, is there a reason the selectmen weren't notified? Second part of that is there a reason now that the signs have been swapped around to now limit spaces where there weren't any? And I understand that we're talking about spaces along Elm Street near Fleming's and the real estate office. Those spaces have been there for 10 years, and they were placed there by the town itself. Now, having said that, the argument that's being put forward is that there's not enough passage on the roadway for emergency vehicles. But I actually walked out with a tape measure tonight, you'd love this, and went from the edge of that parking space where it had been, it's now been black painted over, and across the street. And there's actually more space there than there is on Main Street in front of 5 South Main making that turn. There's actually more space on that width than there is on North Main Street when cars are parked on both the Common and North Main Street. So the point is the standard doesn't apply. The final piece of this is, and I do have to make this point very clearly, we set as an objective as a board that we were going to improve our communication with constituents. And this is a case where no one has responded to this particular communicator, this particular resident. And I'm concerned about that. So not only has parking been altered without our knowledge, right, or even an airing, and secondly, there's been a question put forward in writing by a resident that hasn't been answered, and it's been 2.5 weeks. And in the meantime, parking in front of that residence, not only as a resident, but as a business owner, parking has been eliminated by way of, by a paint job. And now signs are being swapped around in order to clearly limit the no parking lane further. I have some concerns over this.
If I may clarify, the spaces were not wiped out, the road was repaved.
No, they're painted over, you can go see them now.
No, that's on the sidewalk, right? The spaces on the street, the markings on the street have not been relayed yet. So when that was repaved, all the spaces in the whole area were wiped out. Main Street was restriped, Depot Court was restriped, but Elm Street has not been restriped yet, because we're trying to find a solution to make things work. And I've also asked the police to ease their enforcement on that block on an interim basis, so that people can continue to park, including in front of including in the historically located spaces, preferably not on the sidewalk, but on the street, until we resolve how to make this work. So we've been having some lengthy conversation internally about what to do and how to address it, including measurements, by the way. So,
In the meantime,
yeah.
the
And
no-
I've asked
the-
them,
the
I've
no
asked that he
park-
be notified, that the owners on the street be notified of where we are on this.
The no, well, in the meantime, the no parking sign has moved from the pole in front of the historic center, the historical commission. It's moved to the next pole back, which is about, if I remember right, 45 feet. And that's been done in the last 3 days. Effectively eliminating 4 spots.
So the question is, have we really eliminated the spots, or is it just a matter of
Well,
working on
My question,
striping?
my question is threefold. Number one, if it's the authority of the Board of Selectmen, why aren't we hearing about it? Secondly, as a matter of communication, this particular business owner has written to us, has taken the time to write to us, and there's been no response, and yet the actions have already been taken.
There has been response, there hasn't been a response in the last week and a half, because we've still been trying to assess a reasonable approach.
I'm delivering the message that I received at a high level of volume today. So if I'm mistaken with respect to my statement that there's been no response, I'll absolutely retract it. Based upon what I heard from the resident, there's been no response.
There's long been the downtown is tight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has even noticed, but the spaces along
You know
Main
what,
Street.
you know what, it just dawned on me, this is not on the agenda.
No. So I
Don't we have an open
as we
meeting?
finish the warrant tonight, I intend to pivot in November to topics like this where the board can discuss. One of the issues, and I'll raise it now, not to talk about, is whether or not to do an experimental one-way loop in that area. And we've been talking about how to do that. And I said, I'm not gonna start that without having a public conversation with the select. But that is one answer to really address safety primarily, right? The side benefit is you might be able to address parking at the same time, but the primary benefit is safety. So I intended to recommend that be on the next agenda. And
No, I understand, and please recognize that I am,
You're
I am,
conduit.
I'm addressing
Yes.
2 particular activities, and I think I've made those points clear.
Well, with regard to the correspondence, that came to us in the form of an email.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we,
And again, there was contact back by
no,
email.
I believe that
right?
that is the case, but just to cover the base, could you send an email to this
Yep.
entity tomorrow, saying that, you know, in response to your email, if it wasn't clear we were responding, you know, we apologize, but we are doing actions on this, and that we've discussed this at the Board of Selectmen meeting, your message has been heard, and we're working on this, so that response at least has been made, even though it's maybe a week late, you know, that's been done, okay? Then the second thing is that, do we wanna put this, we keep jamming up, but do we want this on the agenda on the 7th or the 22nd, either one, right? Or, folks, do we want it?
But I do think
Go
we
ahead.
need to discuss it, because, I mean, a couple weeks ago, we were discussing, I think this is an unintended consequence of parking on sidewalks. And I have to tell you, I visited a friend of mine on South Main Street, last week, and there's no parking, and and so I pulled up and I was like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody drives by, because I'm like inching into the sidewalk. But I really think we need to understand that we set that in motion, I think, in terms of enforcing parking on sidewalks. And you know, I was actually actively involved in the downtown redevelopment discussions at the time that those parking spaces were put up a little bit on those sidewalks. And I remember it very well, and I remember it was a very clear understanding that we wanted to do this as a
It
kind
was
of
a
an economic.
town effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and by the way, the hedges along that line have all been cut back to line up with the sidewalk. The point here is that, and Kevin, this part is not on the agenda, this was a discussion point. The point here is the authority over parking belongs here, nowhere else, okay? And unilateral decisions, without our input, without our acknowledgement, just seems to me to be off the rails. Second, we've got to come up with a more effective way of communicating. Chris, if you, as I said, if you communicated back with them, that's great. Just, let me, if you would, just let me know when the email went out. Maybe just send me a copy of it so that I can point it out to the recipient.
Copy
okay?
us all on it.
To make certain that, there's,
Yeah, okay.
I don't want anybody taking a knock that's unnecessary.
Right.
Right.
Copy the whole board on it, because I think that original one was sent to the whole board.
Yeah, there was,
Remember.
this is, I wanna underscore without continuing this too much more deeply, there's been no action taken to remove anything. There just hasn't been a restoration of things, because there are.
I disagree. That no parking sign has moved
No,
40
that
feet.
I did not know.
Okay.
Because that's news to me, because I asked that nothing like that happen, to allow us time to resolve this. So that is not what I asked happen.
Okay.
In fact, we specifically left Elm Street off the restriping to allow us time, so we're not gonna fix things in. And we had that conversation just the other day.
Okay.
So that is, and again, so that should not have happened. That was not the intent of the conversations. So I will get that rectified.
Thanks.
All right. No, it's a fair point.
We need not belabor this anymore now and tonight, but I appreciate the direct communication with this particular resident with respect to the actions that you've directed. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right. Next item on the agenda is town manager update, which consists of
So
fiscal year and a dredging project update.
So you received the packet last week of the year-to-date, the first quarter, effectively. At this point, overall, things are fine. There's actually, as Dr. Schubert points out, there's actually it's super early, I wouldn't write too much into this, but motor vehicle excise taxes are actually up over last year. We got our big number in the spring, but last year at this point, we were below the prior year, so that's a good sign, a good trend. Fee income is actually up this year, which is good, but permit income is down, so, it give us then take it away. While the sewer enterprise and water enterprise funds are actually running well at this point, the drought is unquestionably gonna have some impact, as I mentioned here. The usage for September was 35% below last year because drought restrictions were in place. That's only 1 month, but that's still a substantial decrease, even though the other months had been ahead. I do know that in October, the minute it rained, people decided the restrictions have been lifted. The restrictions have not been lifted, to be clear about that. At this point in the year, there's not a lot of watering going on anymore anyway, I wouldn't think, right? So, there's been enough rain that I think what's still growing is probably doing all right. But we do have to watch the drought. I mean, the water levels have started to stabilize and grow, which is good. I just got a report today that the reservoir is up over 57%, close, which is the highest it's been in some time. And we've actually exceeded the October rainfall by 2 inches already from historical averages, which is good. The problem is that's the first time that's happened in over a year, so we still have to watch it. The snow and ice forecast, we have to look, the forecast is, we'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, we're in pretty good shape. Though that, again, we need to watch license and permit revenue. We're still on target, but the big spike maybe several. In fact, I had a department head meeting earlier today, and Bob Egan mentioned that the big permits coming in from Cook and Toll Brothers are pretty much over now, and those are the biggest concentration of new homes. Not that there aren't new homes being built and renovations being done, but the new homes are where the real dollars are. So we'll have to watch that. That was a nice chunk of free cash this year. So, does anybody have any questions for me about any of this at this point? Or?
No, the only comment on this is state revenue growth continues to lag behind projections. They overestimate each year the projections. So percentage year to year, is still at 3.9%. So granted, it's below the projections. The projections were about 5%. So
Right, but the state is, I mean, by the way, you watch us like a hawk, and I appreciate that. The state is still contemplating mid-year cuts at this point.
Yeah, because they're budgeting based on projection, not on actual.
Correct.
Right.
Which they don't.
So they need to catch up to their projections, or there might be some issues. Now, the fact that the October numbers sound really good may mean that we're trending back up, which is good.
Meals tax?
Yeah.
All right, the meals tax. So the first quarter numbers we got only represent 2 months, because the cycle's a little off. It's June, July, August, September, October, November. It doesn't match normal quarters. So we only got numbers for July and August. The total amount for those 2 months was $20,000. If that's for meals and room tax. Typically, that would be 1 month of meals tax, not 2 months of both. Now, it could be, now this is a newly implemented. We're going to see how the next quarter trends, and then we'll formally ask, if it's still unusually low, I think we'd ask the state to certify exactly, do they have everyone, are they collecting it properly? Now, we do know that the Atlantica and Brisa and the Old Salt House were not functioning all summer.
Right.
Now, that's, I don't know if that's the entire reason that those numbers were down, but I'm sure it had a substantial impact. I was surprised that the lodging revenue was as low as it was, though. It just seemed unusually low. But again, I don't have no basis to look at. I can see meals tax revenue. The state's projected it for us for years, ever since this, even though we weren't getting it. So I can look back at the historical trend on that, and that was also low. But the hotel tax, I have no baseline yet. So, but it did seem unusually low. Particularly since summer is the big time of year, where those rooms are, weddings, everything else is going on. So, I think it bears watching, and again, we may have to ask the state if things don't look right again for another. Again, they're still implementing, so who knows? They may be catch up. They may collect on even more of a lag. We don't really know that yet. So, but the initial numbers were weak, weaker than expected. The only good news is that it's not technically budgeted against anything.
Right.
So you should still be okay. Even if no revenue came in, we'd be okay. Again, there's going to be something. We hope it'll track up. So
I think the harbor businesses really only, they just weren't, the hotel might be a curiosity, but the restaurants were pretty much dead, except for the functions, so it doesn't
Right.
surprise me, and I think it might just be
it could be an anomaly because there was that period of inactivity.
Yep.
But it does most certainly bear watching. So that's where we are financially. Things are reasonably good, so we'll keep watch. Dredging. So the update, the company is due to arrive the first, shortly after November, between I think the 1st and the 5th, something like that. They're supposed to be coming in and starting almost immediately. They'll be doing mechanical dredging this time, not hydraulic dredging. So they'll have a dredge, they'll dig, they'll dump. They're going off Marshfield, I think, Green Harbor. Green Harbor. So so they should be able to. I think they're scheduled to work 12-hour shifts. If the weather holds, and this is a company, by the way, that's based out of Fall River and Mashpee. They know the local waters. They've already. I actually met. I was on site with. Lori has already been out with them a couple of times. I met on site with the principal. Looked like an actual Old Salt. I mean, not old. It was actually probably only 35 or 40. He had the big beard and it looked like a nautical guy, right?
So I have to tell you this quick story. One of the fishermen told me that the guy that was running the last crew asked him how long it took to get to the other side of the pond when he was looking out of the channel. So the fisherman said to him, well, 3 or 4 days depending on the weather.
It's out of the pond.
Yeah.
Well, it is the pond.
It is a pond.
Yeah, it could
Technically.
take a little more than 3 or 4 days depending on how you're sailing. So that's that dredging that should start. Now the town, in order to accommodate the safety concerns, they're in an abundance of caution after what happened last fall. Needed to remove 50 additional moorings that we had not intended. They're out. The work did get done. The advisory committee's has released the money, so we have the funds, so we're good to go. It cost us an extra $15,000 or $15,000 I don't have the number that we had not intended. And they'll go back, so the cost goes them back in, so they're all located, they're all removed, and they're kind of in a line inside the breakwater right along with Passings Beach, that's where that was done. So they will be clearing some of the channel and then working their way back in. They're gonna start rationally from the outside and work their way back in, and they'll finish at where that spit of land off the beach is kind of almost come across the sailing club. They're gonna whack that back substantially, kind of do a straight cut from, just pull everything out, and it'll eventually settle back, but
So it'll be like a sheer wall?
yeah, and then it's gonna naturally settle.
Boy, that'll be
Last
a
about
problem for
time.
everybody walking.
See how that works.
And what's the timetable for them?
They have
Completion?
until mid-January. We're hoping they will finish on a more timely basis than that. So if they do a couple of trips a day and they work their crews 6 days a week like they're planning to do, and they actually know what they're doing, which they seem to know, they should be finished within the time frame this time. Because they know that once you get to weather in November and December, you get some nasty days, but for the most part, the weather's reasonable. Once you turn the page to January, all bets are off in terms of weather, and they know that, so they have an incentive to finish, so. You know,
So when we're done, the whole channel will be dredged to 8 feet. The corner of Bassings will be done. Are they gonna swing up?
I think they swing just a little bit into the creek, not very far.
Yeah.
Up the creek.
And then there's also some just inside, there's a box just inside the breakwater, I think they're supposed to be cleaning too.
Yeah.
If I remember the map, I think the map's up on the website, but I
Yeah.
think it may be a little buried, so. It's the same dredge boxes as had been planned, this is just a remedial work that never got to actually.
Okay.
I have to wonder if we, as a noted harbor of refuge, don't have some claim on greater dredging capacity in the mooring field, simply because we're a harbor of refuge.
But, to be clear, by the way, the Army Corps claims that there's no such thing as a harbor of refuge, they just don't. But I'm telling you that the Army Corps, again, I'm not trying to start a debate here. They've said that number one, the term isn't in use anymore. B, Quasit isn't one anyway. I'm just telling you that's what they've told us.
So the law's on the books since 1899, and Jerry Studs, who used to live in town, made us a harbor of, it's very hard to find the legislation. It's very hard to find the determination, but it's true.
I don't know. I'm not disputing it. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that if
Because it obligates them to do things that they may not have the budget to do.
and
Not
maybe one of the reasons you can't.
recognizing
Yeah,
Maybe that's one of the reasons you can't find it.
yeah.
So that's the update on that. Any questions on that?
Personal side.
Any questions?
How we doing on the folks, our local subcontractors that are looking for payment from their subcontractor?
I actually had a good conversation with one of them the other day, and I had follow-up with both Congressman Lynch's office and Senator Warren's office. The fact that Election Day is less than 2 weeks away, or even before it was more than that, has kind of preoccupied some of the staff. They are continuing to work. I got an update from Bob. He's still advocating and working. Unfortunately, the primary point person we had in Congressman Lynch's office left to go out to work for Walpole Police, so he's now a police officer. Walpole.
Who's that?
No, this is one of the staff members on Congressman Lynch's office. So Bob Folks, who's his regional district director, I
Yes.
think, has picked it up. So, and he has all the information that John had anyway. And they're working with another gentleman out of Senator Warren's office, a gentleman named John D'Angelo. So he's following up with this as well. But that office has been, the election's coming, they're focused on that. We're staying in contact. So, we're hoping to try to broker a meeting. That's the next thing we're trying to do. We've already supplied the Congressman's offices, the Senator and Congressman's office, with all the details that Lori's been able to compile. So they are fully briefed on what the circumstances are. So where we are, and by the way, they all recognize that we have nothing to do with this. So they do, and I did get an appreciation from the gentleman I talked to for the fact that we're even trying. He said, well, we don't have a legal responsibility here, and we don't technically have a moral one, but I feel that we do have, we need to advocate for these folks, because even though it wasn't our project, I don't want it to reflect on the town. So, so we're doing the best we can to help these folks out, so.
I recognize that Election Day is coming. it would surprise me to no end if those two candidates didn't recognize the goodwill that comes from simply paying a bit of attention to it.
There has been, and again, to be clear.
I know Congressman Lynch's office has been active throughout, although it's, to Jack's point, I understand that the appeal by the subcontractors who haven't been paid to access the bond has been denied.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And the conversation with the Corps have been ice cold. I bring it up and I get ice on the phone from them. It's like, how dare you even ask us? I think at least one of the people I've dealt with is sympathetic, but he has no authority. The decisions were made over his head in other places, and they're like, no, we're not. So that's why the Congressman's office has to be, and the Senator's office. And so again, I want to be clear. Senator Warren's office is engaged fully on this. Her South Shore aide has come, Mr. Diaz has come down and met, and we had a lengthy meeting here. He came down and met with Lori separately, so they're on the case. After the election, one or both of them may have a lot more authority. If that's the case, hopefully then they can get more action. Even if they're not, it doesn't matter. We're going to pick this. We're going to expect. We have an expectation. These folks have an expectation of an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular item is nonpartisan. Is there something that we might be able to do to gain a higher level of public visibility of this issue?
We've talked about it. I mean, if the board, one of the things that we've been working here is we have to maintain a good relationship with the Corps because they're still dredging the harbor, and we didn't want to be in a position where, now that the project's locked in, they're on their way. I think, there's no turning back. They cannot kind of turn the tugboats around and get everything done. If the board wants to take a public position, it's entirely fair.
Beyond just the
Yeah,
public
draft a
position, I'm
letter.
thinking about it from the perspective of publicity.
Mhm.
In this case, the federal government hired a contractor. The contractor never fulfilled the obligation.
And wasn't
Hi-
qualified.
In turn, hired other local businesses who actually performed their duties, and now they're not paid, and they have no access to the surety bond, and there's no explanation as to why they don't. Thank God we elected these folks, and they in turn have the Army Corps to make sure that things are done up to snuff. It just is it's the worst nightmare of any business owner.
I have to say that other people I've been talking to while doing this grant application have said they have a very hard time working with the Army Corps. It's a consistent story that I hear all the time.
Yeah, that's been relayed to me as well by Senator Warren's office. The first thing they said, "Oh, there they go again." It's
Yeah.
like, well, I said as we were preparing for the second round, I said, how am I expected to tell anybody they should work with you? In fact, I should tell them they shouldn't work with you because you can't get paid. You should demand your money up front or put a lien on them right away. And I'm getting this iciness over the phone. I said, I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just trying to tell you the truth.
Yep.
I said, it's not reasonable to contract with local business owners who are providing fuel and equipment and services, and then leave them high and dry because you failed to manage the contract properly. I mean, that's not okay. By the way, the prime contractor is still on this deal, so it's not like the project is not over, and the prime contractor is still on the job.
So he's still got retainage. He's still got money with
There was a
the
sub.
Army Corps.
Look, I'm. This is not my area of law,
Yeah.
but the project's not over. So I don't, so
Okay.
that's where we are. Any other
Yes.
questions or anything?
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is minutes, it's the 10/11/16 meeting. Everybody, you have those in our package, any motions relative to those?
I move that we approve the minutes for 10/11/16.
I second that.
Very
Okay.
carefully
Any
proofread
further
how you
discussion?
approve it.
Anybody, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, the next thing is topics not reasonably anticipated, Chairman, there are none, 48 hours in advance. Accordingly, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. All right, 5-0, this meeting.